Marked by my alpha professor. A werewolf shifter romance audiobook. Written by Rain Hart. Chapter 1. The Professor Who Sees Ghosts. The first thing she heard was the rustle of dry leaves. Then the cold. It didn't creep, it punched. It slapped against her skin with the indifference of stone. Celestra Lark opened her eyes to a pale sky, all gray smudges and thin light, as though God had forgotten to finish painting it. For a moment, she simply lay there in the damp grass, trying to recall where she was, who she was, when she last breathed. The last thing she remembered was a storm. The sound of thunder, then silence. She sat up slowly. The cold clung to her spine like fingers. All around her, the crooked iron gates of Blackmere Cemetery stood still. No birdsong. No cars. No wind. Only the hiss of breath. Hers? A crow sat on the rusting archway, cocking its head as if studying her. "You're joking," she muttered. Her voice didn't echo. It barely sounded at all. Celestra pulled herself to her feet, brushing away bits of mud and leaf matter from her jeans. Her fingers felt stiff, like they didn't belong to her. Then she turned to look at the grave beneath her feet. There was no name, just moss. A stone so worn by time it had gone faceless. But the ground was disturbed, like something had crawled out. She took a step back. Her boots made no sound. Her heart, strangely, did not pound. Downtown Blackmere felt like walking through a movie set with no crew. People passed by her without glancing up. She called out twice, 3 times. No response. Even when she walked directly into a woman exiting a coffee shop, their bodies did not touch. The woman's hand passed through her shoulder. The woman shivered, looked around, but not at her. Celestra ran. All the way down the street, past the post office, past the grocery store she'd once worked at on weekends, until she stood in front of a storefront with a large window. She looked into it. She saw clothes. Hangers. She didn't see herself. A horrible kind of stillness settled into her bones. Not fear, something worse. Detachment. It took her until dusk to reach Larkhall University. She slipped past the gate, no one stopped her, and made for the residence hall. Her fingers shook as she reached for the door, still holding out some desperate hope that she'd step in and someone would scream her name and hug her and say, "Thank God, you're back. You scared us." But the door handle didn't respond to her touch. She pushed. Nothing. From inside, muffled voices. She pressed her ear to the wood. "I swear," said a girl, Elena, from upstairs. They said it was a heart attack or something, but she was 21. 21. Another voice, quieter. "Maybe it was drugs. Or something else. Do you think she's still in the morgue? She's probably already buried." Laughter. Nervous. Quick. Celestra stepped back. Her hand trembled at her side. Buried. She turned and ran. She didn't remember how she got to room B12, just that her feet carried her there, past the familiar linoleum halls and bulletin boards filled with dusty announcements for blood drives and student exhibitions. B12 was freezing. The overhead lights hummed faintly, as if reluctant to remain lit. The room hadn't changed, still long tables, mismatched chairs, floor-to-ceiling windows crusted with grime. But there was one new thing. A man at the front of the class. He stood by the chalkboard, tall, lean, dressed in a dark wool coat that seemed to absorb the light. His hair was black and swept back with the kind of precision that didn't come naturally. He wasn't young, but he wasn't old either. Around 30, maybe. The classroom was full. Every seat was taken, eyes facing forward. Rapt. Silent. Celestra paused in the doorway. She had never seen him before. And yet, his voice was low and clipped as he spoke. The relationship between death and artistic impulse is often misunderstood. Most assume art is created in spite of mortality, but I argue it is created because of it. He turned slightly. She froze. His eyes locked on hers. She didn't breathe. Didn't blink. He was looking at her. No, through her. His pupils dilated, his shoulders tensed. His lips parted ever so slightly. Then, with a careful calm that made her spine crawl, he set the chalk down and said, "You shouldn't be here." Every student turned, confused. But none of them looked at her. Only him. He took one step forward. Celestra turned and bolted. The Whispering Hall was what students called it, an old underground corridor that connected two of the older buildings, long abandoned. She had always come here when she needed silence. Needed to sketch. Needed to cry. Tonight it didn't feel silent. It felt listening. The overhead bulbs flickered, buzzed. Her body tingled with static. Her limbs jerked involuntarily. "Stop it," she whispered to the dark. "Stop, whatever this is." Her knees hit the floor. Her hands pressed to the concrete. From above, the paintings lining the walls began to tremble in their frames. She was glowing. Her skin, not her skin, her soul. She could feel it fracturing, pieces of herself peeling off and floating into the ceiling like ash. And then a voice. Low. Smooth. Controlled. Lark. She twisted around. He was there. The professor. Standing just beyond the pool of flickering light. "How?" she croaked. "How do you know my name?" He didn't answer. He reached for a canvas hanging crooked on the wall, placing one hand on its corner as though grounding himself. The moment he did, the lights calmed. The vibrations ceased. "I asked you a question," she hissed. "You weren't supposed to wake up," he said softly. Celestra stared at him. "What the hell does that mean?" Still, he didn't answer. He stepped closer, studying her face, like he was trying to memorize it or maybe confirm it was real. She backed away. "Don't come near me." He stopped. Celestra's hands balled into fists. She could feel electricity in her blood, the crackle of it in her lungs, behind her eyes. "If you can see me," she said, her voice trembling, "then you must know." Am I alive?" For a long moment, he said nothing. Then, without a word, he slowly rolled up the left sleeve of his coat. On the pale skin of his forearm, a glowing mark shimmered faintly, silver, moonlight bright. Etched into the skin, almost alive. Her name. Celestra. Written in ancient script. Her blood ran cold. She had never told him her name. Chapter 2, Bound by the Unseen. The dead should stay dead. Ezren Graves reminded himself of that as he stood in the chilled stillness of the Larkhall University Records archive, his gloved fingers trailing over a row of beige file boxes. Fluorescent lights flickered overhead, their hum as restless as the thoughts clawing through his mind. She wasn't supposed to be here. Celestra Lark had died. They had told him so. More than that, he had felt it. Her pulse had vanished from the mental plane. Her presence, once a constant low thrum at the edge of his awareness, had flatlined like a light winking out beneath dark water. And yet, last night, he exhaled through his nose, jaw clenched. Last night, he had looked up from his lecture on post-mortem soul transfer and found her staring at him with those storm-glass eyes. Not her ghost. Not a memory. Her. And only he had seen her. He pulled out a slim file labeled Lark C, Incident Report, the tag curling at the edge as if resisting his touch. The inside was sparse. An incident form, filed by Dean Aloan. Medical documentation unsigned. And a brief, 2-paragraph death notice attached by one signature in unmistakably smooth, looping script. Draven Vexmore. Ezren's shoulders stiffened. The name was inked in too perfectly, neatly tucked between false statements. Draven had been gone for years, officially retired from fieldwork. But this was fresh. Less than 2 weeks ago. Stamped and filed. The bastard had touched this case. Ezren turned and shoved the drawer shut with more force than necessary. Why her? He left the records room and descended the narrow stairwell back to the faculty wing. The building was empty this late. Only the custodians were left, their carts echoing faintly through the halls. No one stopped him as he passed the dean's office. The plaque on the door, Ezren Graves, Provost, gleamed under the low light. Ezren didn't knock. He rarely did. Inside, the office was quiet, dark except for the desk lamp glowing dimly behind a stack of paperweights and trophies. Dean Greaves looked up from her laptop, unsurprised. "Professor Graves," she said, setting her pen aside. "You're working late." "Or early," he replied coolly, stepping into the room and shutting the door behind him. Her eyes narrowed. "This is about the Lark girl, isn't it?" "You filed her death notice," he said, voice even. "But the attached medical report wasn't signed. She was unresponsive for 72 hours. No respiration. No neurological activity," the attending pronounced. "There was no attending." He laid the file on her desk. "This is Draven's signature." Greaves blinked. She hadn't known. Ezren waited, his arms crossed. She reached for the file, scanned the paper, and her mouth pressed into a thin, displeased line. "I assumed the report had been vetted," she said, quieter now. "You know how the board handles student deaths. Swift, discreet. Convenient," Ezren murmured. "Are you accusing me of a cover-up?" "I'm accusing someone of playing God." Greaves leaned back in her chair, folding her arms. "She's not dead, is she?" Ezren didn't answer. Didn't need to. The weight in his eyes was enough. The halls of Larkhall never truly slept. By the time Ezren returned to his office in the faculty wing, the moon had risen beyond the old cloister windows, casting long, fractured shadows across the tile. He didn't turn on the lights. He sat at his desk, removed his gloves, and stared at the silver mark still faintly pulsing on the inside of his wrist. Her name hadn't been there last week. Soul binding always left a mark, but this was involuntary. He hadn't summoned her. He hadn't touched her. And yet the connection had carved itself into his skin. There was only one explanation. She wasn't just a soul. She was a fragment. A lost piece of a mate bond that had never been sealed, never completed. It made her volatile, unstable, and dangerously tempting. Ezren closed his eyes. He had been trained to recognize spiritual interference, to ignore it. But since the lecture hall, since her eyes locked onto his like a scream pressed into silence, he had felt her everywhere. At the edge of his consciousness. In the corners of his dreams. Like smoke curling under the door. The room chilled, subtly at first, then all at once. He opened his eyes. She was here. He didn't see her, but the air changed when she came. The temperature dropped, the shadows thickened, and the scent of violets and rain-soaked stone lingered in the air. "I don't know what you are," he said into the dark. "But you're not a ghost." A whisper behind him. "Then what am I?" He turned. Celestra stood by the window. Her hair was damp from some invisible storm. Her skin glowed faintly, like moonlight made flesh. And yet, she didn't reflect in the glass. He rose from the chair slowly. "You shouldn't be here." "I keep hearing that," she said. "But I can't seem to leave." They stood across from each other in the hush. "I tried to touch my door. I went in my dorm. I watched my friends talk about me like I was a rumor." Her voice cracked. "And then I came to you. And you looked at me. You saw me." Ezren said nothing. She stepped closer. "What did you do to me?" "I didn't do anything." Her laugh was bitter. "Liar." His jaw flexed. "I don't know why I can see you," he said. "But you're not dead." "Then why can't anyone else see me?" "Because you're not whole." The words spilled before he could stop them. She froze. Ezren cursed himself. Celestra stared at him with a look that belonged to someone who had been betrayed too many times in one lifetime. "Am I a ghost?" she whispered. "Or a mistake?" "You're neither." "Then what am I to you?" That stopped him. He could lie. He could push her away. He should. But she stood in front of him like something ancient and sorrowful and beautiful, and he couldn't look at her without remembering the way she had screamed in his dreams, burning, collapsing, breaking. "You're a question," he said finally. "One I don't know how to answer yet." Her breath hitched. Then she turned and vanished, no sound, no shimmer. Just a void where she had been. That night, Ezren didn't sleep. When he finally drifted off, it was not into rest. In the dream, she stood in a circle of fire. Her skin peeled away in wisps of smoke. Her eyes begged him for help, her hands reaching toward him. But he couldn't move, couldn't touch her, could only watch as the flames rose higher, devouring her until nothing remained but her name, etched in silver and ash. He woke with a start, soaked in sweat, breath ragged. And from somewhere beyond the walls, faint and distant, a scream. Real. And female. His blood ran cold. Chapter 3. Heat Without Touch. Celestra had never dreamed with heat before. Since waking in Blackmere Cemetery, her world had been shades of cold, thin air, glimmering frost in places where breath should fog, and the way her skin passed through door handles and paper cups without resistance. But this dream was heat. Thick, golden, unbearable heat. She stood in a room that shouldn't exist, her old dorm, bathed in low amber light, the air humming like the moment before a summer storm breaks. The bed was unmade, the curtains drawn half open, and on the far side of the room, someone stood with his back to her. Ezren. His coat was gone, his hair unbound, shadowing the strong line of his neck. He was barefoot, dressed in a half-buttoned black shirt and nothing else. Celestra opened her mouth, but no sound came. She reached forward. Her fingers hovered near his spine. Just an inch. Maybe less. His body was heat. Not imagined warmth, real, searing, trembling heat that skittered up her arm like lightning waiting for a place to strike. She touched him. Only for a second. And he gasped, spun, eyes wide, shocked. His hand snapped around her wrist. Their skin met. And for the first time since she'd died, since she'd fallen out of the world, Celestra felt real. Felt tethered. Felt burning. He began, voice hoarse. But the room shattered. And she woke, panting, curled up on the stone floor of the whispering hall, her bare arms prickling with sweat, though the corridor was cold as always. Her body hummed. Her veins buzzed with the echo of something unfinished. He had felt her. She knew it. Later that day, the snow fell hard outside the windows, but she didn't care. The cold was irrelevant. She was being pulled somewhere. Tugged by memory, by something older than instinct. The abandoned East Gallery sat beneath the campus's old foundations, a relic from Larkhall's first iteration, closed after a structural collapse 2 decades earlier. Only a few entrances remained, and most were hidden. But Celestra remembered. Or maybe the building remembered her. She passed through cracked walls and ancient doors, her steps soundless against tiled floors. Paint peeled like dead skin. Broken canvases lined the walls, unfinished works of color and madness that whispered when no one listened. It was here, beneath this very ceiling, that she'd gone missing once as a child. For 3 hours. No one found her. When she reappeared on the grass near the West Quad, she had no memory of where she'd been. Her parents thought she had sleepwalked. The school had hushed it up. Now, 21, not entirely alive, not entirely dead, Celestra stood in the same gallery and finally heard what the walls had been trying to tell her for years. She wasn't made for this world. She had been left here. A fragment. A mistake. Or a key. She touched a mural that bled rust across the cement. Wolves. A pack of them, etched in thick brush strokes, some with too many teeth. One stood apart, smaller, wrapped in chains of silver ink. As she stared, the paint vibrated under her palm. A presence entered the space behind her like thunder wrapped in silk. She didn't turn. "I thought you'd find me here," she said. Ezren stood in the doorway. His eyes, wild, dark, and unguarded, locked on hers. His chest rose with the restraint of someone standing too close to fire and refusing to scream. "I felt you last night," she whispered. His jaw tightened. "Why do you run?" she asked. "Every time I get close." "Because I can't touch you," he said, stepping into the gallery. "And I can't stop wanting to." The words stole the breath from her lungs. He moved carefully, like a predator trying not to trigger a trap. His energy coiled in the room, hot and electric. "You don't know what you are," he said. "You don't know what you're becoming. Then tell me." "I can't." "You don't trust me." He stopped walking. Just feet away. "I don't trust myself." For a moment, silence again. Just the hum of the paintings around them and the tension between two people too close to the edge of something irreversible. Celestra stepped forward. He didn't move. She lifted her hand. Paused. Then let it hover an inch above his chest. There was no contact, but the heat was there. The pressure. The pull. "You don't have to touch me," she said. "Not really." His breath hitched. Her voice dropped, soft and dangerous. "I think you already did. Back there." In the dream. Ezren's eyes darkened. "You burned me," she added. I woke up shaking. His head tilted. "That was you. You didn't dream me?" "No," he said, voice rough. "You dreamt me." She closed the gap further. "I think I want to do it again." Ezren's hands clenched at his sides. His body, so rigid, so restrained, vibrated with the force of something ancient and dangerous trying to escape. His canines had lengthened, just slightly. His throat flexed. "Stop," he said, hoarse. Celestra smiled. She tilted her head, let her soul lean into him. The air sizzled where they didn't quite touch. Her voice was soft. "What are you afraid of, Professor?" His hand slammed into the wall behind her, his arm a cage near her head. Not touching her, never touching, but the heat radiated off him like the edge of a wildfire. "You don't know what you're playing with," he growled. She whispered, "I think I do. Don't tempt me." Too late. The growl that left him wasn't human. It was low, possessive, pained. His forehead leaned close to hers, their lips inches apart. His eyes burned with something far beyond hunger. "You're not stable," he said. "You're not whole. You're a splinter of something I shouldn't want. But you do." His breath shook. She reached up, just a breath away from his skin, and let her presence graze him like velvet on a blade. "You dream of me," she said. "I feel it." His eyes fluttered closed. Her lips hovered near his ear. "I want to know what you're holding back." Ezren trembled. Then his voice, quiet and guttural, "You're the only mate I can have." The gallery lights flickered violently. Celestra stepped back. She said nothing. She didn't need to. He'd already said everything. Chapter 4: A Wolf's Shame. The deeper Ezren delved into the archives, the more the walls began to whisper. It wasn't literal, not yet, but the sensation was real enough, like voices caught in the spines of old leather books, syllables embedded in dust, waiting for the right scent of blood or guilt to uncoil them. He had come to the records hall under moonlight. It wasn't locked. It never was, not to him. There were permissions, and then there were instincts, and Ezren had learned long ago how to move through both. The floorboards groaned under his boots as he passed into the lower chamber, lit only by lanterns enchanted with low, flickering wards. They cast long shadows between the carved wolf pillar shelves, tall and silent as watchers. Every book here was scent-bound and time-sealed, accessible only through blood clearance or soul lineage. He had both. The file he needed was kept beneath the altar shelf, one of the few sections protected by code and claw. Ezren whispered the key phrase, an old phrase, in the pre-Union tongue. Wavensar. For those who were lost to the spirit's tether. The seal responded with a slow, grinding sound, like a reluctant heart unlatching. And then it opened. He expected to see something simple. A name. A chart. Maybe a body count. What he found instead made his breath stall. Project Lark. Not a whisper of it had been seen in a decade. And here it was, bound in black hide, sealed in bone thread stitching. The lettering was silvered, faded in places, but the purpose was clear. He opened it slowly. The first page bore no introduction, no index. Just one phrase, centered and sharp. What the gods broke, we remake. He turned the page. Candidate 14, Celestra Lark. Date of emergence, confidential. Estimated, 9 years, 272 days prior to termination. Termination status, inconclusive. Ezren's heart slammed once against his ribs. Below that, handwritten annotations in a slanted, elegant script. Psychic fusion instability, severe. Potential usage, limited. Soul channel responsiveness, extreme. Subject recall probability, suppressed. Disposition, fractured, feral during link breaks. Designation, failed alpha core. His hand tightened around the page, the paper crinkling at the edge. Failed? They had called her failed? He closed the file gently, too gently, before the urge to shred it took over. His blood thrummed with a heat he rarely allowed past his skin, rage, tempered with something worse. Shame. Because he hadn't known. Because he should have. Because he had let her think she was broken when in truth, she'd been broken by design. He shoved the file under his coat and left the chamber in silence, steps rapid now, direction clear. He needed answers. And there was only one man left who could still give them. Draven Vexmore did not haunt Larkhall like a ghost. He did it like a king in exile, never seen, but always felt. Ezren found him in the one place he expected and dreaded most. The observatory. Abandoned after the war, the glass dome cracked from moonfire, the telescopes left to rot in their steel joints. And yet the air shimmered with pulse energy, light that didn't belong to sun or star. Draven stood at the edge of the great glass platform, hands clasped behind his back, black coat rippling in the slow wind that somehow reached this high above the forest. He didn't turn. "I wondered when you'd come," he said. Ezren didn't speak at first. The wind carried too much, and his throat was lined with something bitter. "Did you sign her death certificate?" he asked at last. Draven's head tilted, just slightly. "You'll have to be more specific. There have been so many." Ezren stepped closer. Celestra Lark. A beat of silence. Then, the name they gave her. "You buried her in ink. You declared her dead. But she's not." "No," Draven said softly. "She isn't." Ezren's hands fisted at his sides. What was the plan? Draven finally turned. His face had not changed in a decade. Ageless. As if even time refused to touch him. His eyes, always too pale, fixed on Ezren with gentle calculation. "I suppose you've read the records." "She was a child. She was a vessel. She's alive." "Barely." Ezren stepped forward. "You used her as a weapon." "I used her," Draven said, "as she was meant to be used. An alpha core can only stabilize if you sever it from its base humanity. She was born unstable. We gave her purpose. You broke her. We forged her. There's a difference." Ezren's voice dipped into something low, unsteady. "She feels everything. The cold, the hunger, the touch she can't have. And now she thinks she's lost her mind." "She has. She's mine." That made Draven pause. "Yours?" he asked, faintly amused. "I feel her," Ezren said. "Her soul. Her heat." "You called her a failure because she wouldn't submit." "No," Draven said softly. "She failed because she remembered how to love." The silence between them cracked like a bone breaking in the distance. "You think you can protect her," Draven said. "But you're the one who will kill her." Ezren's eyes flared. "She's bonded to me." "Exactly. And if she bonds again, if she lets another soul link to hers while unstable," Draven stepped closer, voice like velvet and venom. "She'll go gray, Ezren. She'll turn to ash from the inside out. She'll burn alive in a body that isn't hers anymore." Ezren's breath stilled. "Don't let her love you," Draven said. "It'll be the end of her." Ezren didn't sleep that night. He stood at the window of his quarters, watching the snowfall turn the world into something soft and indifferent. His mark still glowed on his wrist. It pulsed once, twice. A whisper of her, from somewhere in the dream layer, brushing the edge of his senses like a prayer unspoken. His wolf stirred beneath the skin, restless, straining against the chains of reason. She was his. But he was the one thing she could never survive. Chapter 5: The Hunger We Deny. The world tilted sideways before it exploded. Celestra didn't know what triggered it. One moment she was sitting in the far north wing of the Larkhall Library, her sanctuary since death, since drift, since denial, and the next, her soul convulsed like it had torn itself apart mid-thought. The lamps dimmed. The floor rippled under her. And then the pain came. It wasn't sharp. It was devouring, like her consciousness was being unraveled thread by thread, each fiber plucked by invisible fingers that knew exactly where she was weakest. She gasped, slumping forward over a forgotten desk, her hand slipping through a dusty volume like fog. She couldn't breathe, couldn't scream. She didn't need air anymore, but her body, her soul, still remembered what it meant to want it. Something in her chest cracked. The hunger was back. The need. The unbearable ache of not being seen, not being touched. She bit down on a sob. He wasn't coming. He wouldn't. He couldn't. But then a shudder in the air. A shift in the light. And Ezren stepped through the threshold. Not like a man. Like a force. His silhouette rippled at the edge of her perception, outlined in silver, eyes catching moonlight that didn't belong to this world. His presence fell across her like a net made of shadow and scent. And suddenly she could breathe again. "Don't move," he said, voice low and reverberating with something ancient. "I wasn't planning to," she choked out, though her body trembled with static. He didn't walk. He crossed space like it bent for him, arriving at her side with no sound, no hesitation. He didn't touch her. He never did. Instead, he knelt beside her, palm raised just an inch above her spine. And the pressure began. Like gravity twisted. Celestra arched, a cry ripping from her throat, not from pain but from sensation so intense it felt invasive. Heat flooded her. Her skin flushed, bloodless body responding as if she'd returned to the world of pulse and breath. Her thighs clenched. Her lips parted. Her neck snapped backward as invisible heat coursed down her arms, across her belly, deep into her. Ezren's hand didn't move. "Spiritual compression," he murmured. "You're unraveling. I'm holding you together." She made a strangled sound, teeth gritted. "Feels like something else." "It's not." "Liar." His jaw flexed. The energy between them was no longer subtle. The space that separated soul from soul stretched like silk pulled taut. Celestra felt him, truly felt him, for the first time. His scent was burned pine and cold smoke. His mind a storm kept barely in check. And at the center of it all, hunger. Not for food. Not for conquest. For her. She twisted slightly, her gaze catching his. His pupils had dilated. His hand still hovered, refusing contact, as if even the brush of skin would unleash something neither of them could contain. "Look at me," she said. He did. "Tell me the truth." Ezren's voice was sandpaper and steel. "About what? Have you had other mates?" A silence so profound it became deafening. His breath faltered. "I need to know," she pressed. "Was there someone else you marked? Someone who survived you?" He closed his eyes. And that told her everything. Her heart cracked and poured open. She sat up straighter despite the tremors, her face inches from his, daring him to lie. "You did," she whispered. "Did you love her?" "It's not like that." "It's exactly like that." Ezren stood abruptly, distancing himself. His body moved with the stiffness of restraint, every muscle clenched like a battlefield. "You don't understand," he said. "Then make me understand." He turned to her, fury and grief tangled in his features. "She wasn't like you. She didn't burn like you. She didn't come back from death asking to be broken again." Celestra stood too, something primal rising in her. "I'm not asking to be broken," she snapped. "No, but you're asking to be touched." The words hit like a strike. She didn't deny them. He stepped closer, breath harsh. His fingers flexed at his sides. One more step, and he'd be against her, chest to chest, all that rage and desire collapsing in on itself. She whispered, "So touch me." Ezren froze. Her lips barely moved. "No one else can. No one else dares. But I know you feel it too." He leaned in, mouth ghosting over her cheek, down to her neck, to that hollow just above her collarbone. Her soul flared, white hot. "Don't tempt me," he breathed. "Then stop pretending you're not already tempted." A low sound came from his throat, part growl, part groan. She reached up, fingers brushing the fabric at his chest, not quite touching skin. He jerked away. "I can't," he bit out. "Why?" "Because I'm not strong enough." Her brows furrowed. "What does that mean?" "It means," he rasped, "if I touch you, really touch you, body or soul, I won't stop. And you won't survive it." Silence fell like snow. Ezren's eyes were glass, cracked and shining. "You're fragile," he said. "You don't know it. You think you're strong because you burned through death, but that fire, it's wild. If I add mine to yours." His breath stuttered. "You'll shatter." Celestra's lips parted, and all she said was, "Then let me break." Ezren didn't reply. He vanished, gone in a blink of light and pressure and absence so sudden she nearly fell forward into the void he left behind. But even after the space stilled, the hunger remained. It curled beneath her ribs, a flame denied oxygen. And it whispered the truth she already knew. Some hungers were never meant to be fed. But they would eat you alive just the same. Chapter 6, His Name on My Skin. The night pulsed with too much sound and too little air. Celestra stood on the threshold of a house glowing gold with music and laughter, her limbs buzzing from something she couldn't name. Not quite anxiety. Not quite hunger. But close enough to both that her soul ached in warning. "It's just a party," Juno said beside her, tugging at her hand. "You need this." Celestra's eyes flicked to her roommate, scanning her neon eyeliner, her easy smirk, the way she wore defiance like perfume. Juno always knew where the wolves played, even when no one else was supposed to. "I'm not built for parties," Celestra muttered. Juno leaned in, her voice sharp with knowing. "You're not built for hiding either." And with that, she dragged Celestra inside. The house was an off-campus relic, a Victorian monstrosity retrofitted with bad lighting and worse taste. Music throbbed through the walls like a heartbeat struggling to keep rhythm. Shadows twisted beneath cheap chandeliers, and the air reeked of expensive liquor and raw magic. Celestra's presence barely registered. She glided through bodies like breath through smoke, her touch unfelt, her image ignored. But she felt them. The wolves. Their auras coiled in the corners of the room, some bright, some feral, some so old they vibrated with ancient rules she hadn't learned yet. Juno had said it was a relaxed pack gathering. Nothing formal. No dominance displays. That had been a lie. They all watched each other here, through shot glasses, under laughter, above dancing. And some of them watched her. Not with welcome. With wonder. With confusion. With warning. Juno had already disappeared into the crowd, her limbs wrapping around a boy with green-tipped hair and a grin too sharp to be human. Celestra stood near the back of the parlor, where the lights flickered low and the curtains were drawn. A chill ran down her spine. And that was when she saw him. Draven. Across the room, surrounded by wolves who gave him too much space to be comfortable. He wore black. Always black. His gaze was unblinking, untouched by the shadows, and yet somehow deeper than them. He didn't move. Didn't blink. But he was looking directly at her. Celestra's breath hitched. Her fingers curled instinctively against her thighs. The air around him shimmered. She took a step back. The crowd didn't part for him. It was already parted, like he belonged outside of it. She turned to leave, body vibrating with instinct, with that primal scream that only ever said one thing: run. But the moment she pivoted, another pressure struck the room. Harder. Sharper. It wasn't ice. It was wildfire. The entire house stilled. And Ezren walked in. The music didn't stop. But the bass missed a beat. No one turned to look at him, but everyone noticed. Even the wolves. Especially the wolves. Ezren's presence dropped like a shadow across the entire party, his energy cold and furious and sharp enough to peel skin from bone. Celestra stared, lips parted. He was in black again, his shirt open at the collar, exposing the curve of his throat, the glint of a silver chain. His eyes weren't glowing, but they didn't need to be. They were hunger, barely leashed. And they were on her. In the second it took for her to exhale, he crossed the room. Not touching anyone. But everyone moved. Until he was in front of her. And everything else fell away. His hand didn't touch her waist, but it hovered, close enough that she felt the heat of it as a warning. "You shouldn't be here," he said, voice so low it slid between her ribs. She swallowed. "I didn't come for you. Didn't you?" His gaze flicked to Draven. A silent challenge. Draven smiled, lazy and elegant. But Ezren didn't smile back. The energy in the room dropped again. Like a glass of water slowly freezing. People began to leave. One by one. Until it was only wolves. And them. Ezren stepped closer. Celestra's breath caught. His voice, sharper now. "This is not your space. Not yet. You haven't learned how to shield." "I'm not helpless." "No," he said. "You're volatile." Her hand brushed his arm, just barely, and he trembled. That was when the air snapped. A blast of power exploded from him, not loud, not violent, but absolute. It poured through the walls, through the bones of everyone still present. The windows didn't rattle, they simply went silent. Every light dimmed. The wolves dropped their eyes. Some took a step back. Celestra stood frozen in the eye of it. Ezren's control cracked. And for the first time, he let it. "I don't share what's mine," he said. Her heart stopped. The words weren't gentle. They weren't romantic. They were law. Draven tilted his head in mock approval. Ezren ignored him. His hand finally met her hip. Just one finger. Celestra flinched, not in fear, but in reaction to the heat that flooded her instantly, like someone had set her blood to boil. Ezren leaned in, mouth near her temple. "I'm done pretending," he whispered. "I feel you. Always. I burn for you in every damn breath. And it's killing me." She turned toward him slowly. The distance between them disappeared. But he didn't kiss her. Not here. Not yet. His hand slid away. And then he was gone. The pressure lifted. The house exhaled. Celestra stumbled backward, catching herself on a doorframe, her body shaking like a struck bell. When she found Juno again, her roommate didn't say a word. She just handed her a flask, raised a brow, and whispered, "So, we're doing declarations of ownership now?" Celestra said nothing. She felt hollow. She felt seen. She felt like she'd just survived an avalanche made of fire. Back in her dorm, steam curled around her shoulders as she stepped into the shower, letting the heat wash away the party's residue. She stared at her reflection in the fogged mirror. Something dark shimmered just beneath her skin. She turned slightly. Her breath caught. There, on her shoulder, etched like a brand in moonlight, was a name. Not tattooed. Not written. Carved in spirit. Ezren. Her knees nearly gave out. It wasn't just a soul bond. It was a claim. And she had never given him permission. But some part of her had already said yes. Chapter 7, Tethered in the Dark. The night had a taste. It was metallic and thin, like breath drawn from a blade. Celestra moved through it weightlessly, her soul stretched loose from her body, the way a child might float in a too-deep pool, untethered and reckless. She didn't remember leaving her room. Didn't recall peeling away from her bed, or how her bare feet had never once touched the stone floor as she passed through her dorm, then through the library's ancient halls. The world around her had dulled, the air muffled, soundless, pressed in thick layers of something that wasn't quite silence. She had no breath, no pulse, only motion. And instinct. The pull came from below. Through corridors few students visited, through the forbidden west wing of the Larkhall Library, the part reserved for faculty and legacy bloodlines. A place sealed not by key or spell, but by intention. Celestra moved through the final gate like fog, her soul pressing through metal and ink and memory until she was inside. The room greeted her with breathless stillness. No lights. Only moonbeams, falling in fractured lines through the narrow stained glass fence high in the stone walls. The air tasted of dust, old paper, and rusted blood. At the center of the room stood a single pedestal, and on it one book. She didn't walk. She drifted. And the closer she came, the more her soul buzzed. A static hum in her chest, her jaw, the back of her eyes. The book was bound in gray leather, the edges worn to threads, the spine bearing claw marks. She reached for it, her fingers passing into it like mist touching wood. But somehow, it opened. The pages didn't crack. They whispered. And there, in bold letters on the first page, written in ink the color of dried bone. Lark 003 Experimental Asset Archive. Her name was below it. Celestra Lark. Not a subject. Not a student. Not a survivor. A number. A designation. A file. She read. Words slid into her mind like scalpels. Subject born during unstable lunar cycle. Maternal records redacted. Paternal origin untraceable. First recorded separation. Age 7. Successful spontaneous soul fracture. Recovery window. 3 hours. No permanent damage. Spiritual link classified as volatile. Subject responds to alpha imprint stimuli with accelerated bonding patterns. Warning: do not engage in mutual soul binding. Subject body will not sustain dual fusion. Risk: grayout threshold exceeds 82%. Her hands trembled. Except, she had no hands. Just pressure. Just heat. She turned the page. And froze. Drawings. Of her. As a child. Naked. Hooked to glowing threads. Her eyes open but empty, wires feeding into her chest. Her mouth was parted in silent scream, hair slick with sweat, limbs limp but locked. Celestra reeled back. The book snapped closed on its own. Enough. The voice tore through her, familiar and furious. Ezren stood behind her, his presence slicing the stillness apart like a blade. He wasn't glowing, but his energy was fire and fog. You're not supposed to be here, he said. She spun, soul trembling. You knew. He didn't deny it. She lunged toward him. Her hands passed through his chest, but her consciousness struck his like a blow. You lied to me, she hissed. You said I wasn't broken. I never said that. You let me believe it. Ezren's eyes were bright with fury, and something worse. Shame. You weren't ready. I have a name, Ezren. Not a serial number. I have memories. They aren't yours. She staggered back as if struck. How dare you? His power flared, a rush of heat that pressed against her from all sides, suffocating and intimate. I said enough, he growled. The world trembled. And her soul began to fade. What are you doing? She gasped. He raised one hand, palm glowing with spectral force. Pulling you back. No, don't you dare. You're burning through your tether, he snapped. You're not stable. This room is killing you. It's the truth that's killing me. Ezren stepped forward, expression raw. I didn't save you so you could destroy yourself trying to understand what monsters made you. I'm not yours to control. I know that, he shouted. The force of it silenced everything. Celestra froze, staring. His chest heaved, his face stark with emotion he couldn't hide. I know, he repeated, softer now. You're not mine to control. You're not my subject. You're not my mate. Something twisted behind his words. Her voice trembled. But I am. Aren't I? He shut his eyes. You're everything I'm not supposed to want, he said. Everything I swore I wouldn't touch. You already did. His eyes opened, and they weren't human. They glowed. Not with fury. With hunger. With pain. You call it touching, he said, stepping close, his energy wrapping around her like heat in the marrow. But that's not what it would be. Her breath caught. If I let myself feel you, he said, I won't stop. She shuddered, her soul flickering. And I'm not supposed to belong to anyone, he whispered. But when I feel you near me, I forget that. I'm not asking for forever. You should. I'm asking for now. He leaned in, his mouth near her temple. His words etched fire across her spirit. If I touch you, you will shatter. I already am, she whispered. Ezren's control fractured. He lifted one hand, hesitated, then pressed it against her soul. There was no skin. No heat. Just sensation. And it was blinding. Her breath left her in a cry. His name, not spoken but thought, surged into the space between them like a current too strong to swim against. His mouth hovered over hers, close enough to feel the weight of absence. Then suddenly, her form convulsed. Ezren's head snapped up. Celestra. Her soul spasmed. The space around them rippled violently. And in a heartbeat, he felt it. Cold. Vacuum cold. Her body, her real body, was losing temperature. Too fast. Too far. Ezren's heart seized. No, he breathed. No, no. He reached for her, wrapping his energy around her with both hands, voice cracking as he called her name. She didn't respond. She flickered once. Then again. And he knew. She was dying. For real this time. Not drifting. Not dreaming. Dying. And this time, he might not be able to pull her back. Chapter 8. The Touch That Shouldn't Happen. Ezren had never moved so quickly while feeling so utterly powerless. Celestra's body was light in his arms, too light, as though something essential had already begun to slip from her bones. Her skin was paper cold, limbs slack with that eerie weightlessness only the dying possess. And yet, somewhere inside her, he could still feel her soul. Barely. Flickering like the last breath of a candle before a room goes dark. He didn't trust the medics at Larkhall. Not with her. Not when the entire institution pulsed with secrets buried deeper than the old stone. So he took her. Out of the infirmary. Through the back halls. Into the night. And straight to the one place no one would dare follow him. His home. More fortress than cottage, tucked at the forest's edge, it held layers of wards that shifted like skin over bone. The kind of place that obeyed his thoughts. The kind of place that knew how to keep things hidden. He brought her to the inner chamber. A room with no windows. Only stone, velvet, and silence. The walls were carved with runes, old ones, the kind no wolf dared speak aloud anymore. He laid her on the obsidian silked bed in the center of the room. Her lashes trembled, though her eyes remained closed. Her body was starting to glow, not with light, but with the faintest shimmer of soul heat trying to re-enter its vessel. He knelt beside her, pressed his hand to the curve of her sternum, fingers hovering just above the skin, and began the ritual. The words weren't spoken. They were exhaled through thought and blood memory, passed from his mind into hers by force of will. A chant born in the marrow of their kind, dangerous, forbidden. Bind the wayward spark. Return the fire to its flame. Anchor the essence. Restore the name. Her body arched. A sound escaped her lips, half gasp, half moan. Ezren's hand shook, but he kept it steady. He felt her soul rising, just beyond reach. Wild, burning, untethered. He reached for it. It reached back. And suddenly, everything snapped. Their consciousness collided. She was in his arms. And also inside him. He gasped. Not from pain. From heat. Her soul flooded through him like wildfire poured into a copper wire, searing through his veins, his teeth gritted against the sudden, unrelenting pressure of her presence. It wasn't just contact. It was fusion. And it was intimate. Too intimate. He saw flashes, memories not his. Her childhood laughter. The darkness of an isolation chamber. The moment she woke in the cemetery. The way she looked at him when he entered a room, thinking he didn't notice. Her soul wrapped around him like silk spun from starlight and hunger. And then, she was breathing. Truly breathing. He blinked down at her. Her eyes were open. And glowing. "Ezren," she whispered, voice cracked and almost too soft to hear. His heart stuttered. Her lips parted, trembled. "I can feel everything." He reached to touch her forehead, fingers shaking. The moment he did, her back arched, eyes fluttering shut, a tremor rolling through her like lightning down a wire. "You," she gasped. "Every time you get near, I burn." Her body shimmered with light, sweat beading along her collarbones, and Ezren had to close his eyes to hold himself together. He should have pulled away. He didn't. He lowered his forehead to hers, breath mingling with hers, their souls half sealed, and whispered against her skin, "You were never meant to live inside time like this. You're something else. Something old." And he choked on the rest. Because he wanted to kiss her. Not gently. Not reverently. But like a man who had waited lifetimes to be allowed to crave. She turned her face slightly, lips so close to as they could have shared breath. But then, a crackle. Something wrong. Her body flinched. Ezren's eyes flew open. A mark shimmered on her shoulder, just beneath the skin, glowing silver red, runes crawling like insects beneath the surface. Not his. Not hers. His breath caught. "Draven," he growled. The mark pulsed. And Celestra cried out, her body jolting in his arms. Ezren reacted instantly, slamming a containment ward across her form, whispering grounding phrases, trying to keep her soul from slipping again. But his mind raced. This wasn't just about her instability. She had been poisoned. Branded. Not just by fate. By design. Someone, Draven, had laid claim to her in ways far darker than Ezren had dared imagine. And now, whatever had been dormant in her, was waking. Chapter 9, A Body Not Mine. The first thing Celestra felt was warmth. Not the sterile kind of hospital blankets or the chilled cotton of university bedsheets, but warmth that pulsed. Living warmth. Someone else's heat, lingering in the linens, in the silence. Her eyes opened slowly. Stone walls. Soft light. Shelves heavy with ancient books. The faint trace of cloves and burned sage in the air. Ezren's house. Her body lay cocooned beneath a velvet throw, the same shade as dusk before a storm. Her fingers twitched beneath the blanket. Only they didn't. Not because they were numb, but because the twitch hadn't come from her. Celestra blinked hard, sitting up. Her body obeyed, but not by choice. She hadn't willed it. Her legs swung over the bed. Her toes pressed into the rug. All on their own. A quiet dread began to uncoil in her stomach. "Ezren," she called out. No answer. She stood. Not entirely by choice. It felt like falling forward with every step, like her body already knew where it was going and didn't need her permission. Down the hallway. Toward the study. Books whispered as she passed. Runes etched into the door frame buzzed against her skin, recognizing her presence and yet protesting it. Inside the study, Ezren stood by a table, bent over a glowing diagram inked in silver across dark parchment. The air around him thrummed, thick with magic and tension. He looked up the second she entered. His shoulders stiffened. "Celestra," he said cautiously. "Wait." She kept walking. He moved to block her path. "Don't go near the seal." "Why?" she said, or rather, her mouth did. The voice was hers. But the tone wasn't. It was too smooth. Too sharp at the edges. "You don't understand what it's doing to you," Ezren said, eyes scanning her, reading her. "You're not fully right now." Celestra's lips curved into a smile. One she hadn't meant to make. "Of course I understand," her mouth said. "You made me this way." Ezren flinched. Then his gaze narrowed. "That's not you talking." Her hands moved to her sides. Her head tilted, mocking. "I remember everything now. The wires. The darkness. The way they stripped me down to soul and silence. I remember what you really are, Ezren. Just another handler. He stepped forward, voice low. Celestra, listen to me. That thing inside you, it's not a memory. It's an infection. Don't let it use your voice. Funny, she said sweetly, coming from the man who branded me without asking. Ezren stilled. And Celestra screamed inside her own mind. None of this was her. It was like watching someone else wear her skin. And suddenly, she fell. Not physically, but inward. Spiraling down into the folds of her subconscious until the room faded. And the dream began. It wasn't a dream like she knew them. No symbols. No strange metaphors. Just a corridor. Endless. The walls pulsed with shadow. The air was thick with something chemical and cold. Celestra walked barefoot. And at the far end of the hallway, he waited. Draven. Younger than the real man. Dressed in white. His hands were clasped behind his back, like a teacher inspecting his favorite pupil. You've grown, he said with a smile. Or perhaps, fractured differently. Celestra stopped. This is my dream, she said. No, he corrected gently. This is your cage. And I built it. 1,000 responses rose in her throat, but he stepped forward before she could speak, brushing her cheek with the backs of his fingers. She couldn't move. I told them you'd be extraordinary, he said. But they feared you. They tried to make you something you weren't. What did they make me? She whispered. Not human. Not mate. Not even weapon. His voice lowered. They made you a key. To what? To everything. She shook her head. You used me. I unlocked you, he said. She looked at her hands. They glowed faintly. Her veins pulsed silver blue. I don't want this, she said. I don't want any of it. That's the beautiful thing about power, Draven murmured. Want has nothing to do with it. She screamed. Not out loud, but something inside her snapped. And above her, in the waking world, Ezren felt it. He dropped the containment charm mid-cast and reached forward, pressing both hands to either side of her face. Come back to me, he said, voice shaking. Get out, she growled. Not hers again, not yet. I will not lose you, he hissed. She jerked. And then, he did something reckless. He reached for the bond. Fully. Opened himself to her completely, alpha to soul, instinct to essence. She slammed into him like a tidal wave. Images. Emotions. The taste of her first kiss. The cold of her first cage. The hunger in her chest every time he walked away. Her body shook. Tears streamed down her face. And this time, they were hers. I don't know who I am, she sobbed. I don't even know if I'm real. Ezren pulled her close, wrapping both arms around her as if he could physically shield her from her own memories. You are, he said. You're mine. Her body arched into his. Their breaths tangled. And without asking permission, because it wasn't needed, he pressed his lips to her forehead. A burn. A flare of light. And the mark appeared. Not a brand. Not a wound. A glyph. Etched in gold just above her brow, like a crown forged in promise and fire. Protego. A guardian's vow. A soul's shield. She collapsed in his arms, sobbing. And in the hallway beyond the door, unseen and silent, Juno pressed a phone to her ear. She's awake, she whispered. She's marked. Initiate Phase 2. Chapter 10, The Bond We Bleed. The path into Mouvain Forest narrowed with every step, branches pressing in like skeletal arms, their frost-laced tips snagging at Ezren's cloak and Celestra's hair. The moon above was swollen, heavy with secrets, casting fractured light through the canopy like blades of silver. Ezren didn't speak as they walked. He barely breathed. Celestra followed, equal parts reluctant and drawn, by him, by the call in her blood, by something ancient she didn't yet have words for. Her body still ached from the overload of the previous ritual, and the glowing brand on her forehead pulsed softly beneath her skin, a memory and a warning both. They emerged into a clearing carved by time and intention. The ground sloped downward to a smooth basin of stone where the spirit well lay, a pool so still it didn't reflect the sky but swallowed it whole. Around its rim, runes shimmered in old blood and bone, flickering like a heartbeat beneath the surface. "This is where we sever it," Ezren said finally, voice low, reverent. "The mark. The tether. Whatever Draven left inside you." Celestra took a slow step forward. "And what do we give up in return?" He glanced at her, the edges of his gaze softened by something raw. "We don't give anything. We expose everything." Her lips parted slightly. "What does that mean?" Ezren didn't answer. He simply extended a hand. She hesitated, then placed hers in his. The moment their fingers met, the runes lit up in a chain reaction, spreading outward with soundless force. The air twisted. Heat and cold layered together. Time bent. Then the ground dropped. And they fell. Not through space, but through memory. Not through gravity, but through spirit. Celestra landed, if it could be called that, on a surface made of sensation. Beneath her bare feet, nothing and everything. Around her, a realm woven from light, shadow, and feeling. This was no dream. This was the soul's mirror. Ezren stood before her, stripped of his usual armor, not clothing, but control. His power wasn't hidden here. It radiated from his skin in waves. Untamed. Untethered. This was him unmasked. And she saw herself through his eyes. A memory. A want. A burning need he tried to silence with duty and ritual. He stepped toward her. "You need to open yourself," he said, his voice lower now, coated in thunder. "Completely. Even the parts you hide from yourself." Her throat bobbed. "And if I can't?" "You will." He extended his hand again. This time, when she touched him, the bond ignited. Fire raced up her arm. Her lungs gasped for air that didn't exist here. Her back arched as her body responded not to touch, but to resonance. She felt everything he did. And he, everything in her. There was no hiding. Ezren staggered as sensation slammed into him. Celestra's loneliness. Her hunger. The taste of his name on her tongue in the silence of sleep. The tremble in her thighs when he stood too close. The way her breath caught when he turned his head slowly, bearing just enough throat to undo her. He dropped to his knees. Celestra followed, falling with him. Their bodies didn't touch. But their energy did. Violently. She saw his past, fragmented like broken glass. A mate lost in battle. A promise unfulfilled. Blood on his hands. A vow, never again. Until the quiet pain of recognizing his soul's echo in a girl who should have never been created. His chest heaved as their bond flared, threatening to consume both. Celestra cried out, clutching her chest. Heat unfurled through her, sensual and brutal, as if the bond itself pulsed with desire long denied. Her mouth parted. Her eyes fluttered closed. A moan slipped from her lips, unbidden, helpless. Ezren cursed softly under his breath, the sound rough, desperate. His control slipped. He reached for her. Their palms met. The reaction was immediate. A rush of heat between their legs. The flush of breathless longing. Her body shivered, alive with the feel of his want wrapping around her like silk wound too tight. He leaned forward, lips grazing her temple, trembling. "I shouldn't," he whispered. "But you want to," she said, voice wrecked. "Yes." A breath. A pause. Then she said, "So do I." The moment stretched. And then he tore himself away. The bond snapped like a whip. Celestra collapsed forward, gasping. Ezren stood, panting, one hand pressed to his chest as if trying to hold his wolf back by sheer will. "I can't," he rasped. "Not like this." Tears stung her eyes, not from rejection, but from the truth clawing its way to the surface. She looked up at him, voice cracked. "Then what am I? Just another failure in a long list of broken things? Another echo of a mate you couldn't save?" Ezren flinched. Didn't answer. His silence was the deepest betrayal. Celestra rose slowly, legs trembling, eyes burning with the rage of a woman who'd finally found the words to name her own worth and realized someone she trusted couldn't say them aloud. She turned, walked, didn't look back. Ezren didn't follow. He couldn't. He was still bleeding from the bond they hadn't meant to create. The moment Celestra stepped beyond the ring of ancient runes, the light faded. And from behind the last standing stone, a voice whispered, "Brutal, isn't it? When they look at you and still don't see you." She froze. Draven stepped from the shadows. He smiled. "I've been waiting a very long time." Chapter 11. Death was never the end. The ground beneath Celestra's feet was damp, soft with loam and memory. Gravestones stretched in every direction, endless, crooked, moss-eaten markers that pulsed with a pale, ghost blue light. The sky above was not sky at all, but a swirling mirror, reflecting her own image over and over again in fractured panes. She stood in the center of it all, barefoot in a graveyard that shouldn't exist. A graveyard that felt like it had been built inside her. She turned in slow, heavy steps. Every headstone bore no name, no date, just a single thing carved into each, a line, clean, vertical, and final. And then came the voice, smooth as satin stretched over something rotten. "Welcome home." Draven stepped from behind the nearest obelisk, the fog parting around him like it obeyed his very presence. But he looked different here. More real. Less man. More alpha. He glowed faintly, like fire trapped beneath ice, his body half shadow, half light. His eyes shimmered with the same spectral sheen as the gravestones, and his bare chest was crisscrossed with marks that pulsed like scars, still bleeding spirit. Celestra didn't speak. Her jaw clenched. Her hands curled into fists at her sides. "You've been here before," Draven said, walking leisurely toward her. "Not in this shape, no. But your soul remembers it." "What is this place?" "My mind. Your memory. The space between." She backed up. "You pulled me here." "I only opened the door," he said mildly. "You walked in. You always do. Curious little key." "I'm not your key." "No," he mused. "You're everyone's." The gravestones shuddered around them, as if they too were listening. "You died once," he said softly, stepping around her now, circling like a wolf at dusk. "But not in the way people think of death. No heart failure. No final breath. No body laid to rest." His voice dipped lower. "They didn't bury you, Celestra. They deleted you." Her spine stiffened. "You're lying. I'm telling you what your bones already know." He stopped in front of her. "You weren't made to live. You were made to contain. Built to host a weapon so old, no wolf dared speak its true name." She flinched as he raised a hand, but he didn't touch her. Just hovered his palm near her chest. "And do you know what that makes you?" "Trapped," she whispered. He smiled, something cruel and sweet. "Correct." Draven stepped away, his shadow stretching long behind him. "They called it Project Lark. Not because of your name. Because of the myth. The bird that sang before the dawn and never lived long enough to see the sun." Celestra's heart pounded. "You are the song before the storm," he said. "You're what the rest of us were trained to use." "I'm not a weapon. You're not a girl, either." Her lips parted, then shut. The words were gone. He took one step closer. "I know what you want," Draven murmured. "You want Ezren to look at you like you're not broken. You want to believe that if someone just holds you tight enough, all the pieces will stop rattling." Her throat went dry. "But it's a fantasy," he said, voice low. "You can't be loved and be seen, Celestra. Because what you are, what's inside you, isn't lovable. It's unbearable." Her eyes burned. He circled again, slower now. A predator giving mercy time to leave. "So tell me," he asked, "do you want to be loved?" He stopped behind her. "Or do you want to be seen?" The silence between them cracked like ice under weight. And then, softly, she said, "I want." But the words caught. Tears rose in her eyes, hot and unrelenting. She turned around, fists shaking, breath ragged. "I want to be," she screamed. "Myself." The world trembled. Gravestones exploded. The mirror sky above cracked in a spiderweb of soundless light. Draven staggered back as a surge of power tore through the dreamscape, washing over him like molten glass. He raised a hand to shield his face, body flickering between forms, man, shadow, alpha, memory. "You always were the unstable one," he hissed. Celestra stood in the middle of the storm she had summoned, her skin glowing gold-white, her voice trembling with fury and clarity. "I don't care what you made me. I don't care what I'm meant to be. I don't want to be a key. I don't want to be a ghost in someone else's war. I want to be Celestra, even if no one loves her." She didn't wait for his answer. She turned, walked, but his voice followed, dripping with venom, low and amused. "Then take your precious self," he said, "and go die beside him." Chapter 12. My name in his howl. The world came back in shattered pieces. Cold, then heat, then the sound of leaves whispering too fast, like they were panicking. Celestra gasped, her lungs failing to decide whether they belonged to her body or the space between. Her eyes opened, but nothing stayed still. The trees bent sideways, the stars bled across the sky, and every heartbeat sounded like it wasn't hers. She staggered forward from the darkness, soul flickering with every step. The forest pressed in around her like it knew her name, but no longer trusted it. And then he was there. Ezren, on his knees in the clearing where soul and soil met. His hands were covered in blood, his own. Veins lit with burning silver traced up his arms like lightning frozen beneath skin. He looked up, saw her, and exhaled like she was the only breath left in the world. She collapsed to her knees before him, her body, barely hers, trembling between forms. Her skin faded at the edges. Her fingertips glitched in and out of visibility. "Don't speak," he rasped, voice cracked and raw. "Just stay here. Right here." "Ezren," she whispered. "You're bleeding." He laughed. The sound was wrong. "I tore the seam," he said. "Between your body and soul. I dragged you back through it." She blinked. "But that could kill you." "It's already killing me." He wasn't lying. His spirit was fracturing in visible waves, his wolf snarling beneath the surface, desperate to hold the line. And he was letting it slip. "No," she breathed. "No, you can't." He grabbed her hands, their forms unstable but trying to match, trying to hold. Where their palms met, a flare of light surged outward, pulsing into the forest like a beacon. "If I let you go again," he said, "you won't come back. You can't trade yourself for me." His jaw clenched. "I already did." Her breath caught in her throat. "You're all I have left to believe in," he said, voice breaking, "and if I have to lose this skin, this name, this wolf, so you can live as yourself, I will do it. Don't ask me not to." Her tears burned as they fell. They sizzled when they hit his hand. "I didn't ask to be saved at this cost. I didn't ask to fall for someone made of stars and scars," he snarled. "But I did." And then he leaned forward, pressing his forehead to hers. Their bodies flickered. Their souls aligned. The link began to form. And that's when Juno appeared. She burst into the clearing with a scream. "Stop." Her eyes were wide with terror. Her aura was spiraling in chaos. "If you complete the bond," she cried, "they'll come for you both. The Council. The Scorchborns. The entire Order." Ezren didn't move. "I don't care," he said. "You'll lose your rank. Your bloodline. Your name." "I already gave her my name," he snapped. Celestra looked between them, her chest cracking open. "What are you doing?" she whispered. Ezren turned back to her, gaze wild and wrecked. "I'm giving you the last thing they said you weren't worthy of. Choice." Their bond surged, glowing at the edges like molten silver. Juno moved to intervene. But the magic around them had already sealed. Celestra sobbed once, full body. "Ezren," she cried, "if you dare die for me, I will. I swear I'll hate you to the end of my soul." He smiled. "I can live with that." And then they connected. Fully. The bond snapped into place like a howl caught between heaven and blood. Her soul slammed into his. His wolf howled inside her skin. Their bodies didn't move, but everything else did. She felt him flood through her. Every unspoken word. Every unshed tear. Every restrained desire, now let loose like storm wind over sea. He kissed her, not on the lips, but on the part of her that had never been touched. The name inside her. The place she hadn't dared believe was hers. Their souls writhed around each other, howling in sync. And for a moment, she believed she could burn forever in that place and never regret it. Then the sky split open. Not metaphor. Reality. A sound like the world tearing from the inside out cracked above them. Thunder, but deeper. Older. The stars bled red. And in a blink, figures dropped from the sky. 10. 15. Alpha ranked. Armored in black. The true hunt. Sent by the council. Juno took a step back, her eyes wide in horror. Ezren turned, still glowing from the bond, his body flickering between man and wolf. Celestra rose beside him, no longer flickering. Whole. Real. Marked. Their bond burned like a flare against the darkness. And the wolves came for them. Chapter 13. The Eyes in the Dorm Walls. The return to Larkhall was quiet. Too quiet. Celestra stood outside the ivy-wrapped facade of the girls' dormitory, her duffel bag slung over one shoulder, the wind tugging at the hem of her coat. Autumn had begun to rot the leaves, leaving the air heavy with decay and the scent of earth after rain. She stared up at the windows. Her room, third floor, corner, looked empty. But something about it felt aware. Ezren hadn't wanted her to return. That much had been clear. "You're safer with me," he'd said, his voice low, his arms still trembling from the aftermath of the bond. But Celestra couldn't breathe in his house anymore. She needed distance. Normalcy. Something that resembled a life not carved out of secrets and soul burns. So she came back. Mrs. Howell, the dorm matron, had met her with a thin smile and hollow eyes. She said nothing about the incident, no welcome back, no expression of relief. Just a set of keys. A glance that lingered too long. And a single sentence. They always returned different. Celestra hadn't asked who they were. She didn't want to know. Now, alone in the room, she dropped her bag onto the floorboards and looked around. It was just as she left it. Neat. Sparse. A single bed. One wooden desk. A dusty mirror. And a smell. Something faint. Burned iron and dried lavender. She wrinkled her nose and turned toward the window. That's when she noticed the markings. In the corner, where the plaster had cracked behind the dresser. She knelt, heart hammering. Something, had carved a sigil into the wood beneath the peeling paint. Its lines were angular, complex, like a geometric eye curling inward. And it matched the mark now burned into the back of her left hand. Exactly. She reached out and traced it with trembling fingers. The wood shivered. She yanked her hand back. The temperature dropped. Behind her, the mirror clicked softly. She turned. Nothing. Except, in the reflection, her body stood as normal. But her eyes were not her own. They were gold. Slitted. Not wolf. Something older. And behind her, in the mirror only, Draven stood, one hand on her shoulder, smiling. She spun. Nothing. Only silence. But from the mirror, a voice whispered, "Come back to me." The air in the room twisted, and she staggered back, heart pounding so hard she thought it might burst. She ran. The communal bathrooms on the second floor were abandoned, steam hissing gently from the ancient pipes. She needed water. Needed grounding. Needed to feel the floor beneath her and the heat on her skin. She stepped under the shower. Let it wash her. And that's when she saw it. The reflection in the water. Not the mirror. The tiles beneath her feet shimmered with flickers of someone else's form, her body, but not moving as she moved. Her head tilted when hers stayed still. Her hands clenched as hers relaxed. Celestra gasped, stumbling backward. And the drain gurgled. Something pale reached out of it. A hand. Not wet. Not human. Its fingers were long, jointed wrong. Its nails were curved like bone hooks. She screamed, slipping, hitting the tile wall with a dull smack. The mirror above the sink cracked. She scrambled backward, towel forgotten, body slick with water, heart hammering against her ribs. The hand retreated into the drain. Silence returned. Except for the echo in the tiles. Mine. She couldn't sleep. That night, dreams consumed her. Not hers. She was running through the woods, her breath wild, her legs not quite human. Her vision flickered with blood hue. Her tongue tasted smoke and pine. She heard Ezren's voice calling her name, sharp, panicked, desperate. And her body, her wolf, ached for him. Not emotionally. Physically. She wanted him with the hunger of bone and scent and instinct. She wanted to feel his bite, to be dragged down by his weight too. She woke gasping. Naked. Sweat-drenched. Ashamed. She curled into herself on the narrow bed, pressing her knuckles against her mouth, willing the heat in her chest to fade. But it didn't. Not completely. Because part of her still burned with the need. And that was what frightened her more than Draven. More than death. The wanting. In the morning, she visited Mrs. Howell under the pretense of asking for a replacement keycard. The woman handed it over silently. But as Celestra turned to go, she spoke. "You're not the first one who came back," she said. "But you're the only one who looks like she remembers." Celestra froze. Remembers what? The others didn't last long enough to ask. Later, in her room, she couldn't stop staring at the mark on her hand. It pulsed faintly. She tore the dresser away from the wall and began peeling back the wallpaper, heart racing with each layer stripped. Behind the paper, there were carvings. Not just one. Dozens. Names. Dates. Symbols. And then, a photo. Tucked behind the baseboard, yellowed and curling at the edges. She unfolded it with trembling fingers. 10 students. All girls. All dressed in Larkhall uniforms. Smiling. Each with a code number stitched into their collars. Project Lark. She stared at the second girl from the right. It was her. But younger. Paler. And next to her, arm around her shoulder, was Juno. Chapter 14. The Professor's Unforgivable Desire. The file didn't belong in the archive. Ezren knew it the moment his fingers grazed its spine. The leather was too worn, the paper too soft from age and handling, like it had been read again and again by someone obsessed. It wasn't catalogued. No sigil. No department seal. He pulled it free anyway. Inside, the pages whispered with the brittle weight of truth. Project Lark, subclass, null origin conduits. He didn't breathe as he scanned the lines, his mind parsing faster than his eyes. Diagrams. Soul fracture charts. Candidate compatibility matrices. And then one entry, scribbled in red. C003. Codename, Celestra. Born 4 months before authorization. Mother unregistered. Arrival undocumented. Status, anomaly. Anomaly. Not accepted. Not rejected. Not even confirmed. Just unexplained. Ezren's fingers clenched the paper tighter. Ink smeared beneath his thumb, the energy laced into the document still humming faintly with suppressed power. She wasn't supposed to exist. The whole project, its rhythm, its timing, had been engineered to align with celestial nodes. Moon phases. Generational bloodlines. Celestra broke all of it. She had no right to be here. And yet, she was the only one who'd survived. The only one whose soul hadn't collapsed in on itself. Who had adapted, not fragmented. Because she hadn't been chosen. She had arrived. The door creaked behind him. Ezren looked up. Celestra stood in the doorway. Soaked to the bone, her hair dripping onto the tile, her breath rising in slow, trembling waves. Her eyes locked on him. dark, glowing at the edges, empty and overflowing all at once. You knew, she said quietly. Didn't you? Ezren didn't answer. She stepped closer, each footfall deliberate. You knew I wasn't supposed to be part of this. Celestra. Her voice cracked. What am I? He closed the file slowly. I don't know. Liar. The word hit him like a strike. She crossed the room in 3 strides, slamming both palms onto his desk. Her hands were shaking, her body vibrating with something too raw to name. You were supposed to protect me. I am. No, her voice turned feral. You're cataloging me. Classifying me. Dissecting me with your eyes every time I breathe too loud. Ezren stood, jaw clenched. You're losing control. Then help me. He rounded the desk, closing the space between them before he had time to question why. I'm trying. You're hiding. You don't understand. I understand enough. She shoved him back. Hard. His body hit the file cabinet with a thud. Before he could speak, she turned and stormed out. He followed. Through the halls. Past locked offices and deadened lights. To the rear stairwell, where old brick pressed in and the air still smelled of smoke and candle wax. She stopped at the landing. He caught her wrist. She spun. Their bodies collided. And something in both of them snapped. She shoved him again, but this time he caught her waist, pushed her back against the wall, caging her with arms that shook from restraint. You want to talk about hiding? He growled. You walk into my dreams, into my soul, every time I close my eyes. She bared her teeth. And you wake up hard and ashamed. His body stilled. Her lips curved, bitter and broken. So what is it, Professor? You want to save me, or you just want to own me? Ezren exhaled like he'd been punched. Say it, she snapped. Say what you want. His voice was a growl. You want me to claim you, Celestra? Maybe I want to be chosen for once. Not designed. Not programmed. His hand hit the wall beside her head. The space between them evaporated. Their breath tangled. Their bond trembled beneath the surface like a live wire dipped in water. Then say it, he rasped. You want me to take you? Mark you? Drag you down until you forget what you were built for. Her nails scraped the edge of his shirt. I want to know if what you feel is yours, she whispered, or just another side effect of a broken bond. Ezren's hands moved, one to her throat, not pressing, just holding. The other to her waist, fingers curling, not pulling her close but warning. His voice fractured. You think I don't wake up cursing your name? Then stop looking at me like you need to breathe me in to survive. I can't, he admitted, voice wrecked. Then he leaned in, his lips brushing her jaw, her neck, the edge of her pulse. Because when I breathe you in, he whispered, I remember who I was before they turned me into this. She shivered. Her back arched. Their bodies never fully touched. But the air between them ignited. Her scent hit him like a punch to the gut, moon and ash, and something so real it burned. Ezren pulled back just enough to look into her eyes. And then, slowly, he raised his hand and drew a symbol in the air between them. His true name. Not the one he used in lectures. The one buried deep, marked only for soul recognition. A swirl of flame and frost. A symbol of bond. Of declaration. Of mate. The glyph hovered between them. Then, it shattered. Ezren staggered, catching himself against the wall. His chest heaved. Celestra gasped as pain tore through her sternum, through her bond, through the core of who she was. She wasn't his. Not by right. Not by law. Not by the order of wolves. But her soul reached for him anyway. The air between them crackled with protest. And from deep in the stairwell below, something laughed. Chapter 15. Whispers in the Art Wing. The scent of turpentine and mildew was almost comforting. Celestra walked slowly through the corridor at the back of the Larkhall Art Building, her boots echoing across warped floorboards that hadn't been replaced since the 90s. She trailed her fingers along the flaking blue paint of the hallway, dim light flickering above her as though even the bulbs feared the swing of campus. They said the back studios had been condemned. Too many break-ins. Too many unexplainable accidents. Too much silence. She was told to come anyway. Professor Reyes, the new adjunct, wanted to meet privately before their supplemental theory session. Whatever that meant. She didn't remember signing up for the class. But her name was on the roster. And Juno had all but pushed her down the hallway with a nervous smile and a forced, "He's brilliant. Just don't ask too many questions." That had been enough to pique her curiosity. Now, in front of the rusted door marked Studio F, Celestra paused. It was cracked open. Inside, soft jazz played on an old turntable. Dust danced in the light pouring through the fractured skylight above. And in the center of the room, sleeves rolled to the elbows, dark eyes framed by silver hair and a still young face, stood Professor Reyes. He looked up. His gaze landed on her like it knew too much. "You're late," he said, but without reproach. "Or perhaps just exactly when you needed to be." Celestra stepped inside. He nodded toward the far wall, where an easel stood waiting, already prepped with canvas. "I find most students don't need instruction. Just permission." She blinked. Permission for what? To remember. Her throat went dry. But she moved to the easel anyway. Reyes didn't speak again. He simply walked past her, placed a brush into her hand, and whispered, "Let the hand follow what the mind refuses." She didn't remember starting. But the bristles moved. And her body followed. Lines. Curves. Splashes of gray and red and white. Her fingers worked faster than she could think. The image began to form. Not abstract. Not impressionist. Too detailed. A body. Her body. Laid on a metal table. Tubes down her throat. Wires in her wrists. Eyes open, unseeing. Ribs cracked open like wings. Her breath hitched. She dropped the brush. The room spun. Her stomach lurched, but she couldn't look away. Every detail matched her dreams. The straps. The symbol on the wall. The scalpel hovering above skin that shimmered with soul light. It was her. The version of her she wasn't supposed to remember. The one Draven had made. She backed away from the canvas, trembling. Reyes stepped beside her. He said nothing. The silence dragged out, a chasm filled with breathless recognition. Then her voice cracked. "Why did I paint that?" "Because it's true," Reyes said softly. "Art speaks for what memory buries. I don't want to remember." He turned to face her fully. "Don't you?" Tears stung her eyes. "What am I?" He studied her for a long, long moment. Not clinically. Not cruelly. But like a man who had seen too many half-formed things given life, and watched what it did to them. "You are not just one thing," he said. "Not just girl. Not just wolf. Not just experiment. Then what? You are the place where all those truths bleed together." Her lip trembled. And then her hand moved on its own. She reached for the painting. And with a single swipe, tore a black streak across her own dissected form. The canvas screamed in silence. Celestra stumbled back. "I'm not a person," she whispered. "I'm not even whole. I'm a composite. A vessel. A body they rewrote. I don't know what's mine anymore. My name, my face, my thoughts, none of it feels like it belongs to me." She pressed her fists to her temples, voice rising. "Am I human? Am I wolf? Or just some pet project, a toy for alphas to dissect and decide?" She turned away from the easel, chest heaving. Reyes walked to her slowly. "Not to touch. Just to be near." "You are not a pet," he said. "You are a hunter waiting to remember what she's always been." She let the words hang. Her breath hitched, as if trying to believe him might make her real again. "I don't feel like a hunter. Because you've never been allowed to hunt." She blinked, and something shimmered behind her eyes, an old memory, not fully formed. Then the room creaked. Louder than footsteps. Reyes tilted his head toward the far wall. "You should look," he said. She turned slowly. One corner of the wall, the one with the oldest peeling paint, had begun to crack. A split, long and jagged, opening like a wound. She stepped closer. From within the wall, claw marks. 5 long rakes, old and dry, carved deep into stone. They weren't human. Below them, partially revealed in the crack, an inscription, inked in old language. She knelt to read. The letters glowed faintly as she mouthed the translation. When the blood mark is torn, the true form will rise from flame. The air went still. Celestra reached out, fingertips brushing the ancient claw marks. And in the back of her mind, a howl echoed, long and low and unmistakably hers. Chapter 16. The heat between us is a lie. Celestra awoke to the scent of burnt sage and iron. Her body felt weightless, but not free. The air around her hummed with containment, like the walls themselves pulsed with intention. She opened her eyes slowly, adjusting to the dim, copper-colored light. She lay on a stone slab, carved runes glowing faintly beneath her skin. They didn't hurt, but they pulsed in rhythm with her breath, tracing the curve of her spine like a second heartbeat. Ezren's containment chamber. Not just any room. The room he never let anyone enter. She sat up. The temperature shifted. Above her, the ceiling was lined with obsidian mirrors, fractured so they would reflect only pieces of a soul. Chains hung loose from the walls, not for bodies, but for energy. The space was built to hold something monstrous. Something like her. Ezren was seated across the room in a chair, elbows on his knees, gaze shadowed. He didn't speak. She did. You put me in a cage. His voice was hoarse. To protect you. She swung her legs off the slab, bare feet brushing the runes etched into the floor. Or to protect yourself? His jaw tensed. I felt everything, she said, stepping toward him. In the dream. You let the bond slip, Ezren. You let me in. His eyes snapped to hers. Her pulse kicked. Because she saw it again, that fracture. That animal wanting coiled beneath his restraint like a wolf held too long on a leash. I didn't mean. You didn't mean to what? She asked, closing the distance. To touch me like that? To pin me against your dream wall and press your mouth to my neck like I was yours. He stood abruptly. But she didn't back away. If it was real, she said, then say it. If it was just a trick of the bond, say it. You don't understand what I've done to stay away from you. No, she whispered, but I understand what you do when you think I can't remember. His breath caught. She stepped closer. Ezren tried to move back, but his calves hit the edge of the chair and he froze. Celestra lifted her hand, placed her palm flat on his chest. His heart thundered beneath it. She tilted her head. Is this what you call protection? He inhaled sharply. Or is it guilt wrapped in discipline, dressed up as virtue? Don't, he said, his voice rough. She didn't stop. Instead, her soul reached outward, unleashing the pressure that usually only crept in during ritual. But now she gave it to him full force. Ezren staggered as the weight of her spirit hit him. The glow behind her eyes surged, casting long shadows across his face. His knees buckled, and he dropped. To them. On the cold floor, hands braced, teeth grit. Her power was all around him now. You want to save me, she said softly, circling him. But the truth is, saving me makes you feel needed. He didn't respond. You say I'm not your mate. You say you can't have me. She leaned down, whispering against his temple. Then why do you dream of me begging under you? Ezren shook with the effort of holding himself together. Celestra stood over him, watching the control in him fray like old silk. You want me, she said. But needing me terrifies you. Because if you need me, you can't pretend this is duty anymore. His breath was ragged. You think I don't feel it? She asked. The way you inhale when I pass. The way your hand flexes when I speak too softly. The way you close your eyes every time I say your name. Stop, he whispered. No. She knelt in front of him. Their faces inches apart. If you want to be the noble one, be honest first, she said. You want me? Say it. His eyes locked with hers. Then shattered. I want you, he said, broken. Her chest tightened. He looked down, hands clenched in fists on the stone floor. I want you more than I want my name, my rank, my place in the order. I want you more than I fear what you are. Her breath hitched. I don't deserve to have you, he rasped, voice cracking, but I can't stop needing you. I burn for you in silence. I ache just being near you. Her fingers brushed his cheek. He leaned into it, eyes squeezed shut, soul wide open. I hate myself for it, he whispered. Because I told myself I was here to protect you. To guide you. Not to want you. She moved closer, pressing her forehead to his. His hands hovered in the air, trembling. And then, he collapsed forward into her. Not physically. Spiritually. Their bond roared awake. Raw. Wild. It didn't need touching anymore. It was truth. Their breaths tangled. Her fingers curled into his shirt. His mouth hovered over hers, but never touched. Because this wasn't about lust. It was about surrender. His. To her. Completely. He whispered, tell me to stop. She didn't. She said, you're already gone. And that was when his body convulsed. Not from passion. From pain. Celestra caught him as he dropped sideways, eyes wide with sudden panic. His skin burned beneath her touch. His neck. Something pulsed there. She pushed his collar aside. And gasped. Just below his original bond mark, something new was growing. Not gold. Not hers. It shimmered silver black, the color of corrupted moonlight. Draven's mark. A mimicry of true mate claiming. A parasite. Celestra pressed her palm to it and screamed as the mark bit back at her, its energy surging like a second soul latching to Ezren's spine. He groaned, eyes rolling back. Ezren, she cried, holding him close. What did he do to you? But he was already unconscious. And the mark was still growing. Chapter 17. The Library of Vanishing People. The librarians told students not to visit the sublevels. Not because they were locked, though most of them were. Not because they were dangerous, though Celestra now understood that danger, at Larkhall, was rarely physical. But because the books down there remembered too much. And tonight, she was ready to remember. The upper floors of the Larkhall University library had already gone dark, the quiet hours setting in. Students whispered in corners, digital screens glowing like blue ghosts. But beneath the marble staircase, tucked between a faux bust of Yeats and a crooked Latin inscription, was a narrow service door with a brass handle worn smooth by hands that never admitted they'd touched it. Celestra pulled it open without hesitation. The hallway descended fast and tight. Cold air rushed upward, thick with dust and aged paper and something stranger. Like whetstone and forgotten breath. She stepped down into the dark. A sensor clicked and soft amber lights flickered awake, illuminating shelves that curved like a maze around a circular reading chamber. The walls here weren't built for comfort. They were carved directly into the bedrock beneath the university, the shelves nailed to the bones of the school itself. A single voice broke the silence. You're not scheduled for this floor. Celestra turned. The man standing by the reference desk wore round glasses and a cardigan that had outlived most of the faculty. His name tag read, Pell. I'm looking for references on soul-folding theory, she said. Pell studied her face, then, more slowly, her hands. When he saw the mark branded on her palm, the back of his neck stiffened. He said nothing more, simply turned and disappeared into the shelves. Moments later, he returned with 3 books, none of which bore call numbers. One of them was wrapped in crimson velvet, and stitched into the fabric was a wolf's eye threaded in gold. Don't read them all at once, he warned. She didn't ask why. She settled into a wooden chair carved with old runes, the velvet book thumping softly as she set it down. She opened the first one. And everything changed. Pages and pages of ritual diagrams. Photographs, grainy and black and white, of student rooms with chalk sigils on the floors. Descriptions of soul fractures. Warning notes. Observations. Subject 03 entered phase split. Reality distortion imminent. Discontinued observation. Unstable. Recommendation, mind wipe. And then, on page 117, names. 10 students. All listed as withdrawn. Not expelled. Not deceased. Withdrawn. Juno's name was there. So was hers. And next to each name, a scribbled note. In hers, marked, Alpha contact initiated. Memory seal pending. Subject unstable. Her pulse thundered. Below the final name, Reyes, control failed. Her hands trembled. She flipped to the appendices. There, tucked at the edge of a page, a short line burned into the paper. Ezren Graves, Handler Class, Class V, Initial Connection, C. She froze. Handler. She turned the page. There was a photo, grainy, blurred, but unmistakable. Ezren. Younger. But with the same eyes. He was standing beside a bed. And on the bed. Her. Strapped down. Wires in her skin. Eyes blink. The book slipped from her fingers. Celestra stumbled back from the table, breath catching, bow rising. The library around her seemed to groan. And in the reflection of a glass cabinet, she saw it. Herself. But wrong. Not quite real. Her eyes dark. Her smile cracked. And behind her, hands reaching through the glass. They grabbed her shoulders. And pulled. She hit the floor hard. But it wasn't the library anymore. It was a place made of shadows, woven from the seams of memory and lie. A corridor of broken mirrors and smoke. Celestra turned in a slow circle. The walls pulsed with echoes, fragments of voices, pieces of conversations she hadn't known she'd overheard. You shouldn't exist. She's too wild. Wipe her again. She remembers him. At the center of the corridor, a door flickered into being. She walked toward it, unsure if her legs were moving by her will or the dreams. The door opened without sound. Inside, Ezren. Lying unconscious, shirt open, skin slick with sweat. She moved to him, heart pounding, half in fury, half in grief. Wake up, she whispered. He didn't move. She leaned over him, eyes blazing. You were supposed to be the only one who saw me as more than a number. No answer. She curled her hand into a fist. Her soul surged through it. And she drove it into his chest, not to hurt, but to wake. His eyes shot open. She was on top of him, her breath ragged, her lips barely a breath from his. You were there before I even became me, she hissed. So tell me, do you love me? Or just the thing you made? His gaze darkened. Celestra. She kissed him. Hard. It was not gentle. It was war. It was a wound torn open. He kissed back with teeth and hunger, until she pulled away, panting, her hand fisting in his hair. And then, she bit his lip. Hard. Blood bloomed. He gasped. She leaned close, the taste of him sharp on her tongue. Don't lie to me again, she whispered. He didn't. Because the dream trembled. And she saw it. A flash. Not present. Past. Another version of her. On a ritual slab. Ezren leaning over her, hand glowing. And on her skin. A mark. Burning into her chest. The mark of a mate. His. He'd marked her before. Before she remembered. Before she was ready. And someone had taken it away. She woke screaming. Chapter 18. She wears my hunger like a crown. The bells in the Black Tower had long since stopped ringing. No one remembered why. Some said the metal had cracked with age. Others whispered that one night, the bell chimed 13 times, and a student vanished before it fell silent forever. Celestra didn't care for the stories. She cared that it was high, abandoned, and closer to the moon than any other place on campus. Tonight, that mattered. She stood at the edge of the tower's open-air platform, her body trembling as something beneath her skin scraped against the edges of her bones. It wasn't just the pull of her wolf, it was something older, something forged in blood and sealed behind the wrong name. Behind her, Ezren's breath faltered. He sat against the wall, his shirt torn open, his pulse uneven, sweat glistening down his chest like he was burning from the inside out. "You can't keep holding it back," he rasped. Celestra didn't turn. "I won't kill for balance," she said. "Then take me." His voice cracked on the words. She spun. He was watching her, not pleading, but offering. As if her hunger was not a thing to be feared, but worshipped. "You're not prey," she said. Ezren smiled, painfully, reverently. "I'm whatever you need me to be." She stepped toward him, each movement deliberate, measured, dangerous. "You said I was made for war. You are. But I feel like a wound that never closed." He looked up at her, expression raw. "Then use me to stop the bleeding." Her body moved before thought. One hand braced against the stone wall above his head, her thigh sliding between his knees. He didn't resist. He tilted his chin, offering his throat like he already belonged to her. "You know this isn't the bond," she whispered. "I know. It's not ritual. I know. It's choice." Ezren's eyes burned silver in the moonlight. "Then choose me." Celestra leaned down, her mouth grazing the curve of his jaw. Her power dripped from her lips like honey turned to fire. He trembled beneath it, but didn't flinch. Her tongue brushed the cut on his lower lip. Ezren inhaled sharply. "I thought you were alpha," she said. "I thought I was too." She scraped her nails down his chest, slow and sure. His breath hitched. "But now," she whispered, "I think you were always mine." He didn't speak. He offered. Celestra's mouth met his with a force that wasn't just passion, it was consumption. She pressed him back into the stone, devouring the part of him that had waited so long to be unmade. Ezren responded with a growl, one hand burying in her hair, the other gripping her waist like he was drowning and she was the only thing keeping him alive. She broke the kiss to speak. "You're not alpha," she said again, lips brushing his throat. He shuddered. "And if I take too much?" she asked. "If I break you?" His response was a low moan as her teeth grazed his pulse point. "I want to be broken by you." She bit down, not to mark, but to claim. He cried out, a sound not of pain but release. "I'll be your omega," he whispered, "if it means you stop running from the fire inside you." She pressed their foreheads together, panting. His voice was hoarse. "Make me yours." And so she did. They didn't follow rites. They didn't speak oaths. But their spirits collided in a way no ritual could mimic. He opened for her. She poured into him. Raw. Unfiltered. Her soul sliding along the ridges of his want, her hunger no longer needing to be denied. Their bodies never needed to fully touch to feel. But they did. And when they did, it was not domination. It was devastation. Her hips pressed down, his hands clawed upward, and they met in the place where need drowned all hierarchy. Where breath became prayer. Where silence became scream. He kissed her as if she were the end and beginning of him. She held him as if he were the only thing keeping her from turning to ash. They moved like storm and sea, their bond singing in every shattered boundary between them. When it ended, they lay tangled in shadow and moonlight, bodies still humming from a magic older than wolves, deeper than any may bond. Ezren's voice was almost a whisper. "You wore it." She turned her head. "Wore what?" "My hunger," he said, eyes soft. Like a crown. She didn't speak. Didn't have to. Because somewhere deep inside her, she felt it. A shift. A throne being carved inside her bones. A fire settling behind her eyes. And far away, in the art building, Professor Reyes stood alone in front of a canvas. He dipped his brush in crimson. Finished the final stroke. The painting, Celestra, draped in a cloak of moonlight, a crown of bone and flame atop her head. And beneath her bare feet, Draven's body, motionless, floating in a lake of blood. Behind the painting, the black moon began to rise. Chapter 19, The Girl Who Should Have Stayed Dead. The sky over Larkhall was bone white. It wasn't the color of cloud or light or even moon, but of something bleached by time, by silence, by too many questions left to rot. Celestra stood just beyond the iron gates of the library, her breath visible in the unnatural chill, though it was mid-autumn. Students passed around her in hurried steps, their eyes down, voices lowered. No one said it aloud, but everyone knew. Ansel was gone. Not gone like transferred. Gone like disappeared. Vanished mid-shift in the library's upper west wing, with his notebook still open on the desk and his tea still warm in the cup. No witnesses. No scream. No sign of struggle. Only silence. Celestra hadn't known him well, just a face, a presence, a voice sometimes heard debating theory in Professor Rhea's open sessions. He always smiled too wide. Doodled wolves in the margins of his notes. She had seen those drawings. And last night, she had seen his skin. In her dream. Or what was left of it. He had stood in the middle of a silver-lit field, body upright, voice silent, as invisible claws peeled flesh from his chest like ribbon, muscle twitching under air that wasn't real. She woke screaming. The worst part? His eyes were fixed on her. As if she had done it. By midday, the campus was buzzing, but tightly contained. Professors didn't mention the missing student. No official notice came. Instead, the security presence doubled, and whispers began to circle. A summoning gone wrong. Another failed ascension. Blood debts still echoing in the walls. And below it all, her name. Celestra. Some said she was cursed. Others whispered that the dead followed her. She didn't deny it. Not anymore. She sat on the stone steps behind the east tower, hugging her knees, trying not to shiver despite the unrelenting wind. Ezren approached without sound. She felt him before she saw him. He sat beside her. Didn't touch. Didn't speak. Just breathed like he had no right to. Finally, she asked, "Was it me?" He didn't look at her. "I don't know. Don't lie." His hands flexed once, then stilled. "I traced Ansel's last aura imprint," he said. "It collided with your soul field before it vanished." She sucked in a sharp breath. "Which means?" "It means your field is active. Strong. Possibly involuntary." She blinked back the heat in her eyes. "Involuntary how?" Ezren's jaw clenched. "Like a beacon. For lost souls." He shook his head. "For dying ones." Her heart cracked. "So when I woke up," she whispered, "I stole someone else's place?" "Not stole." "Then what?" He didn't answer. She turned to him, voice rising. "Say it. Say what you're thinking. You're not the cause. That's not what you believe." Ezren looked at her then, but it was a different gaze. Not longing. Not guilt. Just distance. As if she were no longer something to hold, but something to observe. She stood abruptly, chest heaving. "Tell me the truth." He rose, slower. "You want the truth?" "I need it." Ezren's voice was low. "The truth is, we don't know what you are." "Not anymore." She staggered back. Like he'd hit her. He didn't follow when she turned and walked away. For the first time, he let her go. And that was what broke her. She didn't go back to her dorm. Didn't answer Juno's texts. Didn't breathe the same way she used to. Instead, she followed him. At dusk. Through shadows and silence. Ezren walked with purpose, cutting across the abandoned paths behind the astronomy lab, past the overgrown amphitheater, toward the building no one mentioned anymore. The old drama hall. Long sealed. But not locked. He pushed the rusted door open and stepped inside. Celestra waited a full minute. Then followed. The theater smelled of velvet rot and broken memories. The seats were overturned. The stage sagged. But in the center of it all, lit by a single flickering flame, Ezren stood, speaking. To someone she couldn't see. Until she could. The air rippled. And then. Draven. Not fully formed. A projection. A ghost. A memory held together by will and unfinished ritual. But it was him. His smirk. His voice. "Still trying to tame your little wolf?" he asked Ezren. Ezren's shoulders were tense. You've marked me. Draven's expression twisted with amusement. You let me. Don't pretend otherwise. I'll find a way to remove it. You won't, Draven said, glancing toward the shadows, where Celestra stood frozen. She won't let you. Ezren flinched. You don't control her. But you don't understand her. Draven stepped closer to the flame. Do you know what she is now? Ezren didn't answer. She's the door, Draven said softly. Every time she wakes, someone else disappears. Every time she breathes, the threads twist tighter. And every time you touch her. Celestra's heart slammed in her chest. You bleed a little more of yourself into me. Ezren turned sharply, voice a growl. You won't have her. Draven smiled. Too late. The flame winked out. And so did he. Ezren stood alone. Except he wasn't. Because when he turned, he saw her. And the look in his eyes was not fear. It was regret. Chapter 20, The Room That Tastes Like Blood. The old theater had a different kind of silence at dawn. It wasn't empty. It was waiting. Celestra slipped through the backstage door before the sun crested the hill, the breath of early morning thick with dew and old dust. Her fingers trailed along walls too cold for autumn. Paint peeled like scab skin. The boards under her feet creaked like distant voices, half-choked. She followed the instinct. Not logic. Not the tether of Ezren's fading scent. Just the tug beneath her ribs, where something ancient and aching lived. The corridor behind the dressing rooms ended at a narrow door, one that hadn't been on any of the maps Reyes had let her glimpse. It opened without resistance. And the stench hit her immediately. Not rot. Not mold. But iron. Blood. She stepped inside. The dance hall was massive. Dust-veiled chandeliers hung at odd angles, and the floorboards were warped by moisture or memory. Mirrors lined all four walls, though most were cracked, warped at their edges. And on the far wall, her. Over and over again. Painted in ash and rust and something darker, something wet. Her body. Naked. Laid out on ritual stones. Sigils inked across her skin. Her hands folded over her chest like a corpse in mourning. Each image was different. One showed her burning. Another showed her bleeding beneath the moon. One had no face. And in the center, the largest mural, depicted her kneeling, head bowed, and behind her stood Ezren, marking her. The old way. Alpha style. Mouth on her nape. Blood on his lips. Celestra stumbled back. The mirrors on the walls shimmered, fogging from within. Then movement. Not hers. Not now. She turned slowly. The mirror behind her cleared. And showed Ezren. Younger. Bare-chested. Bare-souled. Kneeling above a girl. Not her. Another. Paler. Smaller. But with the same eyes. Celestra watched, frozen, as his hand pressed to the girl's chest, right over the sternum, and the mark flared to life, golden and terrible and binding. She gasped. The girl arched beneath him, her mouth opening in a scream that had no sound. And then she went still. The mark dimmed. And Celestra felt it. Like a knife through her soul. A vacancy being filled. The mirror cracked. Her own reflection returned. But now, her face wasn't hers. It flickered. Between her and the girl. She stumbled back. The air shifted. Behind her, a voice. Draven's. Silken and venomous. She died to make room for you, he said. But you knew that, didn't you? Celestra spun. Shut up. Your soul didn't just form from the ether, darling. It grew inside what was left of hers. I'm not her. No. But you wear her bones well. Why show me this? She demanded, fists clenched. Draven's apparition smiled. Because he never told you. And because you need to know, you're not the first. You were the second offering. Her heart thudded painfully. I chose to live, she whispered. And so did she. The mirrors all shattered at once. She dropped to her knees, ears ringing. blood seeped from the walls. Real or imagined, it didn't matter anymore. It smelled like truth. And truth tasted like betrayal. Ezren found her curled against the base of the shattered mirror. She didn't look at him when he knelt beside her. Celestra. Who is she? He closed his eyes. You know who she was. You marked her. A beat. Yes. You killed her. His breath caught. No. She died during the merge. I tried to pull her back. I failed. Celestra stood, staggering, furious. You never told me. I wanted you to be yours, not hers. Then why does she live inside me? Ezren reached for her hand. She pulled away. I'm not angry because she died, she whispered. I'm angry because you looked at me like I was new, like I was something you chose. He swallowed. You are. She shook her head. No, she said. I'm a substitute. Her voice broke. You carved yourself into someone else, Ezren. And now you want to believe I'm not the shape she left behind. She turned, blood on her hands from the wall, from herself, from memory. And she ran. Ezren didn't chase her this time. Because maybe, deep down, he knew she wouldn't let him. Back in the dorms, hours later, Celestra stood in the hallway outside her room, shaking. She dipped 2 fingers in the broken ink jar on her desk. And on the wall by the door, in quick, raw strokes, she wrote, I am the second choice. Then let her fingers slide down the paint like tears. Chapter 21. The Bite I Gave Him. The trees didn't whisper in the forbidden forest. They watched. Tall and ancient, their bark slick with moss and age-old ash, they bent slightly toward the old training grounds like mourners at a grave. And beyond them, half buried in ivy and mist, sat the cottage. Ezren stood before it, one hand pressed to his ribs, the other wrapped in glowing warding runes. His breath came ragged. The mark Celestra had left across his soul hadn't faded, not since the night she vanished into the woods and didn't look back. He knew where she'd gone. Where else could she go when her body was no longer hers? The old wolf training lodge was built for alpha initiates, for those too young and volatile to be trusted among humans. Now it lay in ruin, forgotten by even the council. Except one. Her. He pushed the door open. And froze. Inside, the air shimmered with heat. Not warmth, feral energy. The scent hit him like a tidal wave, ash, storm, blood. She crouched in the center of the room, naked save for the wrap of shadow and sweat along her skin. Her hair hung wild around her face, her back slick with exertion. Around her, claw marks tore through the floor. The room was shredded. Her eyes were not human. Not entirely wolf. They were something worse. Something new. Celestra, he said, voice hoarse. She turned her head slowly. Not startled. Not ashamed. Just watching. You came, she said softly. He stepped forward, cautious. You've been missing for 3 days. Not missing, she murmured. Just molting. His chest tightened. Your soul is destabilizing, he said. You need grounding. You need. I needed to get rid of the version of me that loved too softly. She stood. And walked toward him. Each step was precise. Predatory. Her feet didn't make a sound. Ezren didn't move. Didn't breathe. Because she was no longer walking like the girl he'd tried to protect. She was walking like the queen he'd tried to contain. Her palm landed on his chest. He shivered. You wanted to be my Omega, she whispered. But you still wore the crown. He met her gaze. I never meant to dominate you. No, she said. You meant to define me. Her hand shot up, gripped the back of his neck, and slammed him against the wall. Ezren grunted as the air was knocked from his lungs. She straddled him in a blur, thighs tight around his hips, mouth at his ear. You trained in this place, she breathed. Fought your first blood duel here. Yes, he gasped. She licked the curve of his jaw. And yet you never learned what it meant to submit. Ezren gripped her hips, not to push away, but to steady himself. Because her energy was overwhelming. Crushing. Ecstatic. She leaned in. And bit. Hard. Her teeth sank into the curve of his shoulder, right where the bone tattoo of his royal rank rested. Ezren screamed as fire raced down his spine. She didn't stop. Didn't flinch. She tore. Bone cracked. The sigil snapped. The ancient marker of lineage, the crest of the council, was reduced to dust beneath her bite. She pulled back, blood on her lips, and whispered, "You don't get to wear a crown while kneeling for me." Ezren's knees buckled. He fell. But she caught him before he could hit the ground. Their faces inches apart. He was trembling, pale, but smiling. "Celestra," he said, voice a rasp, "you've never looked more like yourself." She dragged her tongue across her lower lip, smearing blood away. "I will ruin you," she said. "And you'll love me more for it." His breath hitched. He nodded. "Already do." She pushed him back. He landed on the ruined mattress, arms splayed, chest heaving, blood soaking his collarbone. She climbed over him like a storm about to consume a city. Their connection sparked without ritual. No symbols. No moon. Just will. She took him. Claimed him. Not for comfort. Not for safety. But because his body would no longer be the place he hid behind titles or guilt. It would be hers. He surrendered. And when he did, it wasn't weakness. It was the deepest kind of loyalty. They moved together in rhythm carved from breath and silence, claw and gasp, her growl echoing between his teeth as he arched beneath her, every defense peeled away. And in the moment just before their souls locked again, Ezren smiled through the pain and whispered, "You're no longer a wolf." She paused. "You're something more." Then his eyes rolled back. His body convulsed, and darkness swallowed him whole. Ezren dreamed. In the dream, the air was red, and Draven stood before him. "Still pretending she belongs to you?" the shadow asked. Ezren's lips moved, but no sound came. Draven stepped closer. "She's tasted power now. Tasted your blood. You're a memory." Ezren fell to his knees. Draven knelt beside him. "She doesn't need you anymore," he whispered. "She belongs to the king I built." And behind him, a throne made of bone. And Celestra sat on it, smiling. Chapter 22, Night Class of the Damned. The summons came without warning. A whisper beneath her pillow. A flicker behind her eyelids. A pulse in the base of her skull as midnight struck. Celestra sat upright in bed, not fully awake but no longer dreaming. Her body moved before thought, dressed, laced boots, coat over shoulders. Her door creaked open, not by her hand. Down the hallway, other doors opened too. Students stepped out in silence, barefoot and blank-eyed, walking in tandem like sleepwalkers bound to the same invisible cord. None of them spoke. None of them blinked. And all of them moved toward the library. Celestra followed. The steps felt like a descent into another world. The great library's doors groaned open on their own, revealing the shadows of shelves that stretched into the dark. Mr. Pell, the aging librarian, stood by the main desk, his eyes black and shining with an otherworldly glaze. "This way, please," he said softly. No one answered. They descended deeper than the archives, past locked gates and forgotten maps. At the very bottom, a door with no handle, only an imprint. It pulsed when Celestra stepped forward. The door opened. The air behind it was not air. It was soul. The underground lecture hall was vast, circular tiers descending around a pit of stone. Faint candlelight shimmered in impossible places. Every seat was filled with students, all silent, their heads turning in unison as she entered. At the center of the pit stood a stone lectern, and behind it, chalk hovered midair, writing of its own volition. A single phrase repeated over and over. "To sever the soul is to cleanse the shell. To sever the soul is to cleanse the shell. To sever." A voice rose. Not human. The students began to chant. Celestra's breath caught. The energy in the room surged, soft tendrils of light peeling from every student's chest like unraveling threads. They were reciting a soul break ritual. And they didn't even know it. One by one, their spirit cords thinned. Their lips moved, but their eyes were gone. Celestra stepped back. "No," she whispered. "This isn't right." She turned. Juno stood behind her, watching, breathing too fast, eyes too knowing. "You shouldn't be here," Juno said, panic rising in her throat. "You're not supposed to see this." "What is this?" Celestra demanded. "What are they doing?" Juno looked down. "Finishing what I couldn't." The words hit like a slap. Celestra stepped closer. "What does that mean?" "I was meant to be you," Juno said. Project Lark's first attempt at integration. The vessel before the vessel. I was Prototype 0. Her voice cracked. I wasn't strong enough. I didn't survive the final merge. I fractured before I could become her. Celestra's chest heaved. "The one you are now," Juno whispered. "The perfect balance of soul, wolf, and void. You're what I was supposed to be." "No," Celestra said. "You're my friend." Juno's eyes filled with tears. "No, I'm your warning." Celestra reached up, her fingers brushing Juno's cheek. "You deserved better." Juno choked on a sob. "I didn't get a choice." "Then let me give you one," Celestra whispered. "Let me finish what you started." The room around them shook. The ritual reached its peak. The chalk stopped writing. A silence fell. And then, a crack of sound. Every student in the room slumped forward, eyes open, bodies still breathing. But gone. Their spirits had been severed. Their minds, vacant. Celestra stumbled to her knees. The light in the room condensed, a single thread of spirit energy sliding from the ceiling down into her. She gasped. It didn't burn. It didn't invade. It merged. And then she heard it. A voice. New. Not hers. Not Juno's. Something else. Older. Female. Powerful. "I am the memory between your ribs," it whispered. "The scream in your first breath." Celestra's mouth opened, and the voice spoke with her lips. "I remember how to burn them all." Chapter 23. The Ghost in His Bed. Ezren awoke to the taste of her on his tongue. Sweat clung to his body, sheets twisted tight around his waist like he'd fought sleep and lost. The room was dim, filtered in pre-dawn hues, and yet he couldn't tell if the air was warm or frozen. His breath fogged as though the walls had closed in, sealing him inside something sacred or cursed. His pulse thundered. Because she had been here. Not in the way others would understand, not physically. But her scent lingered on his skin. Celestra. She'd filled his dream. His hands trembled as he reached for the edge of the bed, only to stop mid-motion. His shirt, one he hadn't worn in years, lay draped across the foot of the bed, sleeves still warm. The one she'd worn. In the dream. No, not just a dream. She had invaded him. Possessed the one place he hadn't managed to fortify. His mind. His desires. And now his soul. The memories slammed into him. She had walked into the dream slowly, like she owned it. Hair loose, skin glowing with moonlight, barefoot on the wooden floor. She wore his shirt unbuttoned, her thighs bare, her mouth tilted in a smirk that promised more than ruin. He'd tried to speak. She'd silenced him with a finger to his lips. "Don't talk," she had said. And he hadn't. Because something in her eyes made him forget how. She had straddled him like a storm, leaned down, and whispered against his mouth. "You always wanted control. Now beg to lose it." And he had. By the gods, he had. She'd taken him in that dream, not gently. Not softly. Completely. No hesitation. No mercy. Her nails had carved patterns into his chest. Her mouth had found the places he never let anyone reach. He'd tried to flip them, to reclaim the dominance that once defined him, but her power pinned him down, not with strength, but with inevitability. "I don't need to be your mate," she whispered as her hips moved with exquisite precision. "I just need to be the one who haunts you." And she did. Even now, awake, his body remembered her. His skin tingled where her hands had been. His lips were swollen. And worse, he was marked. He turned in the mirror. And there it was. Just above his spine, between the shoulder blades. A symbol. Black. Twisting. Faintly shimmering with spectral light. Not like the sacred alpha mating mark he'd once received. No. This was hers. A reverse claim. She had marked him. Claimed him not as her equal, but as her possession. Her vessel. Her tether. His hands gripped the sink basin until his knuckles whitened. His breath fractured. Celestra, he growled into the silence. You now mark me like prey? Her laughter echoed in the room without sound. He turned sharply. And she was there. Not fully. Not solid. But her image shimmered in the far corner, leaning against the bedpost like she had every right to be in his most private space. She looked deliciously smug. Don't look at me like you didn't enjoy it, she said. Ezren's throat worked. You invaded me. She cocked her head. You dreamt of me. I just made it real. His voice cracked. You made me beg. Her grin widened. You sounded beautiful doing it. He took a step forward, fury and arousal colliding. You now control my dreams? She pushed off the post, sauntering forward, each movement a provocation. I don't want to control them. I want to own them. He stopped as she neared. You now want to dominate me in sleep, too? She touched his chest right over his heart. I'm not asking anymore, Ezren. I don't care if you see me. I want you unable not to. His breath shuddered. Her fingers traced the black symbol growing between his shoulders. Do you feel it yet? He swallowed hard. Feel what? The truth, she whispered. You were my teacher, my hunter, my alpha. But now, her hand pressed flat against his back over the mark. Now you're mine. Ezren's knees threatened to give. His body betrayed him. Because it felt right. And wrong. And so blindingly real. She leaned in, mouth grazing the shell of his ear. I'll come again tonight, she whispered. And the next. Until the only place you feel whole is inside me. And then she was gone. Vanished like steam off skin. Ezren fell to his knees. The silence left behind wasn't peace. It was submission. And he wasn't sure anymore. If he wanted to resist. Chapter 24, The Reaping Begins. The summons came at dusk. A single note slipped under every dormitory door. A soft vibration in every professor's phone. A chime that rang through the school bells, not mechanical, not real, but felt in the teeth. The entire student body was ordered to assemble in the Great Hall. Attendance is mandatory, the message said. Bring nothing. Wear nothing blessed. That last line said more than the rest combined. Celestra stood in the back of the auditorium, spine tight beneath the pressure of 1,000 auras. Every seat was filled, every breath held. Even the faculty stood in rows near the front, their faces pale and unreadable. The room buzzed, not with voices, but with energy. And then the lights went out. A single beam of moonlight split the room from the upper stained glass windows. And 3 shadows stepped forward into it. The Wolf Elders. 3 cloaked figures in silver-threaded robes, their faces half shielded by ornate bone masks carved with old pack runes. Their presence bent the air, made Celestra's lungs burn. Not because of fear, but recognition. They weren't just alphas. They were Fangs, the oldest living enforcers of the blood laws. Keepers of the soul chain. Whispered legends used to terrify young pups. Tonight, they were very real. The center elder raised his hand. The air stilled. Tonight, we begin the weeding, he intoned. The soul broken, the tainted, the unmarked but marked will be revealed. Gasps rippled through the room. The elder turned slowly, gaze sweeping the crowd. And the first judgment, he said, falls upon the one who broke bloodline, broke bond, and bears the curse of reverse claim. Ezren. Celestra's heart stopped. She hadn't seen him yet, but she felt him, his energy dim, wavering, shrinking like a flame in a storm. They dragged him out from behind the curtain. 2 guards held his arms, though he didn't resist. His shirt was torn, face bruised, eyes dull like he hadn't slept in days. His mark, her mark, glowed like a brand at the nape of his neck. The elders stepped aside, letting the entire assembly see him. "This Alpha," said the first elder, "has been bound by the soul of another. He is no longer his own, no longer one of us. His bond is unrecognized by the old laws." "No," someone whispered. But it wasn't a student. It was her. Celestra stepped forward, boots echoing in the silence, eyes burning. "No." The second elder tilted his head. "The she-wolf who marked him speaks," he said coldly. "But she holds no rank, no lineage. She is void-born. Her blood is unblessed." "Then bless it now," she said. Gasps again. But she didn't stop. She climbed the steps toward the center of the stage, the crowd parting like sea foam. Ezren lifted his head just slightly when she reached him. His lips were cracked, voice barely audible. "Don't." But she was already facing the elders. "I invoke royal right," she said. The room hissed. "There is no royal line left," the third elder snapped. "Only ashes." Celestra's smile was slow. "Dangerous. Then let me be the flame." She turned to Ezren and dropped to her knees. The crowd gasped again, but this time in shock. Because she didn't kneel in submission. She knelt in ritual. She gripped his wrist, bit her own thumb, drew a circle on his skin with her blood. "By soul, by scream, by shard," she whispered, "I claim what was abandoned. I take what was broken. And I name it mine." She rose slowly, then did what no wolf had done in centuries. She pulled the strap of her dress from her shoulder. Let it fall. The glow beneath her skin roared to life. A spirit brand, raw, red, brilliant, burned across her collarbone. Not a mate mark. A king's sigil. "I am not mate," she said. "I am monarch." Then, turning to face the elders, she declared, "I am king." And she pointed at Ezren. "And he is my hound." The air shattered with energy. The elders reeled back. Ritual lights burst along the walls. Some students fainted. The moon above turned from silver to black-red, as though the sky itself acknowledged her claim. Ezren sagged to the ground, pain and disbelief etched across his face. "You didn't have to." Celestra crouched beside him. "I did." His voice cracked. "You're becoming just like—" She stopped him with a look. "Don't say it." But he did. "Like Draven." Her breath hitched. He looked away. "You're colder than him now." Silence. And then, clapping. Slow. Deliberate. From the high balcony, Celestra's head snapped up. And there, seated on the ancient throne that hadn't been used in over a century, was Draven. He leaned forward, eyes glittering like knives. "Finally," he said. "My queen stops pretending." He stood, arms wide, and puts on the crown I made for her. Chapter 25, The Crown I Never Asked For. The sun rose wrong. It cracked through the clouds like a wound, bleeding pale gold across Larkhall's ancient stone. The school grounds shimmered, not with warmth, but with pressure. Something heavy had settled over the world, bending it, reshaping it. Every student felt it. Every professor. Every blade of grass. Her name. Her voice. Inside their dreams. Inside their bones. Celestra. She stood at the base of the moon dais, the platform that had once been a ceremonial step for seasonal rites, now repurposed into a throne of reckoning. Her bare feet pressed into the sigil-carved stone, her body cloaked in ash-gray robes stitched with silver thread. Above her head, the sigil spun, her sigil. Newborn, jagged, dangerous. Formed from her own blood. She hadn't wanted this. But one had long ago drowned beneath need. And now the world bowed. They came at sunrise. Thousands. The entire campus. They filled the clearing in front of the ceremonial platform, standing in rows too perfect to be natural. Students. Faculty. Elders. Even the wolves in their beast forms circled the edges like shadows. Their eyes shimmered with silver. All of them. because all of them had heard her. In sleep, in soul, and obeyed. Celestra's throat was dry. The seal on her hand pulsed, crimson and ancient. It had awakened last night, seared itself open when she placed her palm against the temple of bone at the forest's edge. The god in the stone had not spoken. It had screamed. And she had screamed back. Now its power ran through her veins. She could feel them, all of them, tethered to her heartbeat. They were hers. By decree. By law. By spirit. And she hated it. Ezren watched from the edge of the gathering. He wasn't allowed closer. Not because of guards, but because the field around her rejected him. His steps faltered every time he moved forward. His breath caught like he'd walked into a wall of glass and grief. She wouldn't even look at him. Until he shouted, "Celestra." She flinched, but didn't turn. "I know you hear me." His voice cut through the crowd like a blade. "You won." Some heads turned toward him. He didn't care. "You got the crown, the power, the worship. You made them all yours." Now she looked, but not the way he remembered. Her gaze didn't tremble anymore. It didn't search for comfort. It commanded. Ezren's hands trembled at his sides. "But you lost it." She didn't speak. So he said it for her. "You lost the only thing that made you you." Celestra smiled. But it wasn't soft. It was the kind of smile worn by queens before executions. "I think you're confused," she said, voice ringing across the field without amplification. "You think what made me strong was pain. Tears. Please." He swallowed hard. "You think what made me worth loving," she continued, "was how small I could become to fit in your arms." The students didn't move. Not one. "But I learned something," she said, stepping forward, bare feet smearing her own blood across the stone. "I learned that power doesn't corrupt." She raised her hand. The god sigil behind her flared. "It reveals." Ezren's knees gave out. Not because of pain, but because he knew. She wasn't wrong. She had become what the world always tried to break in others. And now, the world would pay for that mistake. "I tried to protect you," he said, breath shaking. "But I should have protected you from this." She tilted her head. "You tried to protect the girl who cried in your bed, who whispered your name like it was a prayer." Her voice hardened. "But I'm not that girl anymore." He flinched. "Then what are you?" She turned back to the crowd. "I'm the one who stopped asking permission." And then, slowly, she reached up and pulled the silver chain from her throat. The last piece of her May bond. She let it fall. It hit the stone with a sound that echoed across lifetimes. Celestra's voice rose. "I abolish the mate system." Gasps. Cries. Elders stumbling. She didn't stop. "I renounce the ancient laws of ownership disguised as love. From this day forth, no wolf shall be bound against will. No soul shall be traded for safety. No child shall be groomed to die for another's devotion." She raised both hands. "I say it now, under the eyes of gods and ghosts. Love is a weakness. Matehood is a chain." The world paused. Then, the old bell tower exploded. Stone and ash rained down. And from the smoke, they came. Dozens. Eyes glowing. Limbs twisted. Souls shattered. Project Larks discarded. The failed. The forgotten. The originals. And they were coming home. Chapter 26, The Wolves That Remember Me. They came at nightfall. Not like hunters, but like memories. Shuffling through the mist that curled in from the eastern woods, dragging malformed limbs, eyes wide with something that once might have been grief. Their bodies were broken, some partially shifted, caught between human and wolf, bones jutting out at unnatural angles. Others were hollow-eyed, gaunt, mouths whispering the same phrase over and over. "Celestra, bring us home." The wind carried it to the rooftops, to the dorms, to the hearts of every student still clinging to sanity. The guards tried to hold the perimeter. They failed. The wolves, the fallen ones, didn't care for walls. They remembered only her. Celestra stood on the balcony of the council tower, blood slicked and silent. Ezren sat behind her, slumped against the stone, arm cradling his side, blood seeping through his shirt. He'd fought 5 of them off already. And still, he would not leave her. She didn't speak, not even as the air filled with the scent of rot and sorrow. Until Juno burst through the door. Her eyes were wide, face streaked with ash. "They're not going to stop," she said breathlessly. "You need to see the root. We found it, beneath the ruins. The old Lark site. The core is still active." Celestra didn't turn. "They're dying calling my name. Because they think you're the one who'll set them free. I was just another tool." "No," Juno said. "You were the mold." Celestra turned then. "What?" Juno held out a photograph, yellowed and burned around the edges. A child's drawing, crude and shaky, drawn in red wax. A circle. A crown. A body dissolving into light. "You made this," Juno said. 10 years ago. "I don't remember." "You weren't supposed to." Ezren coughed softly from the ground. "Where was it?" Juno's face tightened. "In the nursery wing. Underneath what's left of the lab." Celestra's pulse thundered. She didn't need a mirror to know her mark was glowing again. She could feel it, every whisper in the woods, every soul tethered to her body like they'd never left. "Show me," she said. The ruins of the old Project Lark compound weren't buried by time. They were buried by intention. Twisted metal, scorched sigils, shattered restraints, everything half swallowed by the earth, but still humming faintly with failed power. At the center of it all stood the nursery dome, or what remained, skeletal beams reaching into the dirt, cracked glass, and the smell of something that had once been sterile and had turned feral. They descended into the pit without words. Below the ruin, a staircase spiraled downward, one she hadn't known existed, and yet her body moved through it with ease. Like her blood remembered. At the bottom, a door awaited. Her symbol etched into it. Not the one she bore now, but an earlier version. Rougher. Incomplete. She pressed her palm against it. It opened. The chamber beyond was circular, its walls covered in names. Names of children. Codename sequences. Blood types. Her eyes scanned until she found her own. Lark 0001X. First generation, Juno whispered. "You weren't just the best. You were the prototype." Celestra stepped forward on shaking legs. In the center of the room, a small bed lay untouched, a child's mattress covered in old drawings. Circles. Teeth. Wolves. Eyes. One drawing was nailed to the floor as if someone wanted it never to move. She bent down. It was a diagram. Not of a child, but of a ritual. "Termination code," Juno said softly. "The only way to break the network. To sever the link between you and Draven, and them." Celestra's hands curled into fists. "What's the cost?" Juno hesitated, then looked at Ezren. He looked back. And he already knew. "You," he said, voice low. Celestra blinked. "What?" Ezren stepped forward, every movement pain-racked but resolute. Termination code requires a soul-locked vessel to be extinguished at the moment of ritual ignition. "No. You've already severed the mate bond," Juno said. But Ezren never removed the imprint. "You've reversed the mark." "Which means?" Celestra stumbled back. No, I won't." Ezren touched her arm. She shoved him away. "You think I want to kill you?" she screamed. "You think after all of this, after every moment I clawed my way back to you, I'd—" "You don't have to want it," he said quietly. "You just have to do it." Tears spilled down her face. "This is the crown they built for me," she said. "Born to burn, born to rule, born to destroy." Ezren stepped closer, ignoring the blood pouring from his side. "You don't have to destroy," he said. "You can choose." She shook her head violently. "There is no choice. I was born from a tube, designed to wear this skin. I didn't even have a name until someone needed one to carve on a prophecy." "You have a name now," he whispered. "I gave it meaning." She fell to her knees. The room swam. All the names on the wall pulsed. Celestra, Lark, Queen, Monster, Ghost. None of them were hers. And all of them were. Ezren dropped beside her. Blood smeared between them. But his hand found hers. And held. "You can end it," he said. "Or you can carry it. But this time, Celestra." He lifted her hand. Pressed it to his heart. "You decide." The runes flared around them. From deep beneath the stone, a hum began. And in the corner of the room, a final line of code blinked into life. Juno read it aloud. Then froze. Her voice broke. It says, "To activate the seal, the mate must offer themselves in devotion, not death." Ezren's eyes widened. And Celestra realized. She didn't have to kill him. She had to accept him. Fully. With nothing hidden. And that might be harder. Chapter 27. Our hunger was the trap. Larkhall burned. Not in fire, but in sound. Screams echoed from the stone towers, some real, some imagined. Students stumbled through the hallways, their eyes unfocused, their limbs twitching as if their bodies no longer understood gravity. The moon above had gone dark red, staining the campus in the color of dried blood. Celestra stood in the center of the main courtyard, hair matted to her cheeks, the hem of her robe torn and streaked with ash. Around her, the ground cracked with energy, sigils surfacing from the earth like veins, pulsing in time with her heartbeat. From every speaker, every cell phone, every mirror, his voice came. "Draven. You thought this was your ascension," he said, his voice low and smooth, reverberating like a lover's whisper across the mind. "You thought you chose this path." Students fell to their knees, hands clutching their skulls. "You never chose anything," Draven continued. "You were born for this moment, Celestra. Born to wear what I designed. You thought you could love your way out of the cage. But your hunger." He chuckled. "Your hunger was the lock." Celestra stepped forward. With every movement, shadows peeled from her skin. She could feel the others watching from the shattered windows above. Survivors. Watchers. Wolves hiding their eyes. They thought this was the end. But it was the beginning. Ezren appeared at her side. Bleeding. Limping. But eyes still sharp. "Where is he?" he asked. She didn't look at him. "He's everywhere." A blast rocked the western wing. Part of the faculty tower collapsed. Screams again, this time not just human. One of the fallen, the Soul Eaters, staggered into view, mouth open in a soundless howl, blood dripping from its claws. Ezren didn't flinch. He raised a hand, lit with fire and memory. Then paused. "I can end this," he said. She turned to him then, really turned. "What?" "I can sever the soul chain," he said quietly. "I found the old spell. The one they buried under 8 layers of false prophecy. It requires one soul. Unbound. Completely sacrificed. No resurrection. No tether." Celestra shook her head instantly. "No." Ezren stepped closer. "You were right. I was the chain. The mirror. The distraction. The one who made you forget what you are. No. I won't be your leash anymore." She grabbed him. "Ezren, don't." His hands came up, cupping her face. And even now, with the sky breaking open and the earth splitting beneath them, he smiled. "I don't want to be remembered as your mate." She blinked through tears. "I want to be remembered as the one who let you be king." "No, please don't." He leaned in and kissed her. Not gently, not apologetically, but with the fire of someone who knew it was the last. Her breath hitched, and then he pulled back. "Celestra," he said, "you were never supposed to belong to anyone." She screamed. "I don't want to rule alone." He smiled. "You never were alone. You just forgot we all bled for you to stand." He stepped back, lifted his hand, and shattered his alpha mark. The scream that tore from his throat was not human, not wolf, but truth. Celestra lunged for him, but it was too late. The ground beneath him cracked. Light poured from his chest like wildfire. And his soul, burned gold. She caught him as he fell. His body already crumbling, already flickering, already. "Don't go," she whispered. His lips moved. "One final time. You were always my beginning." And then he was gone. Not torn, not broken, but given. Ash scattered through her hands. And as it hit the air, the runes lit. Every sigil across the campus flared. Every fallen wolf paused. Every scream stilled. And in that silence, she heard it. The whisper that had haunted her since the first moment she awoke in the cemetery. Only now, it wasn't a threat. It was a promise. The crown rises from ash. Above her, the sky opened. The blood moon reached its apex. The final hour began. And in her chest, a throne of fire lit. Chapter 28, The Throne of Ashes. Larkhall was no longer Larkhall. It was a dream now. A stitched-together tapestry of corridors that didn't lead where they should, towers that bent skyward then folded inward, classrooms filled with desks made of breath, of bone, of memory. And everywhere, floated voices of those who once were. "King, let us return to the blood." Celestra stood barefoot at the center of the library dome, now transformed into a cathedral of lightless glass. Books floated like feathers. Shelves twisted into thrones. And at the top of the spiraling stairs that once held dusty tomes of dead poets, he waited. Draven. He wore no mask now. No illusion of age or powerlessness. His cloak was ash-colored, trimmed with the golden embroidery of the old council, his hands gloved in translucent flame. When he smiled, it cracked the air. "I never wanted to rule them," Celestra said, voice rough with disuse. "I only wanted to be free." He stepped toward her slowly, like approaching a cornered animal. "And freedom was always the lie I fed you." She didn't flinch when he reached out. His fingers brushed the back of her neck, right over the mark that had never faded. The one he had placed on her. "You weren't made to be free, Celestra," he whispered. "You were made to reign. That's what Project Lark was for. You are the sum of our failures, rebuilt into perfection." He circled her now, slow and reverent. Emotionally unstable. Morally fractured. Spiritually fractured. You weren't one person. You were dozens. She clenched her fists. "You think I didn't feel that?" she snarled. "All the voices inside me screaming, memories I couldn't place, grief that wasn't mine?" "You were crafted from grief," Draven said, reverent. "Each shard of soul we couldn't save, we placed inside you." He stepped closer again. "You aren't the king. You're the graveyard of kings." Celestra's breath faltered. But then, the world shook. A flash tore through the dreamscape, shredding its symmetry. Windows shattered without sound. The floating books fell. Reality glitched. And from the spiral of collapsing stars, Ezren stepped through. No longer cloaked in the smell of pine and earth. No longer alpha. No longer man. He was spirit, burning from within. His eyes were silver fire. Across his chest, the sigil of gray flame, the mark of the soul fused, the ones who walked between memory and matter. His voice thundered without sound. "You never belonged to any of them," he said. Celestra turned to him. He was beautiful. And breaking. "You belong," he said, stepping close, only to the place you're willing to burn for. Her knees gave way. He caught her, held her against his chest. And for a moment, all the grief, the war, the betrayal, the noise, fell silent. But she wasn't done. "I'm not whole," she whispered. "I'm fragments, stitched. A collage of pain. How can you still want me?" Ezren leaned in until his lips nearly brushed hers. "Because you were the only thing I ever loved that fought to break the cage." And then, she kissed him. Not soft, not sweet, but total. Their marks ignited, hers on her collarbone, his beneath the ash. Their souls surged. The ground cracked. And they fused. Not physically, not merely, but spiritually. She moved through him, into him, became one. Flesh arched. Bones hummed. Marks bled light. The dream realm shattered outward, then rebuilt around their collision. Her hands dug into his back. His breath caught as their essence tangled. NSFW moments spiraling in metaphor and shadow. She didn't take him. She reclaimed him. Her body was the altar, and he, her final offering. Inside the blaze of their joining, she whispered, "I am not your queen." He trembled. "I am the end of all your kings." Their bodies burned in the soul fire, twisting, folding, completing. And then, the battlefield reformed. The crowd of spirit walkers gathered in a ring. Draven stood tall above it all, arms raised, the full truth of his power blooming behind him like wings made of sorrow. "You think that joining makes you powerful?" he bellowed. "It only makes you vulnerable." Celestra stood, hair alight, eyes full white. Her veins glowed like starlight through porcelain. And she smiled. "No," she said. "It makes me human." She turned her gaze to the soul eaters, her people. The failed, the broken, the discarded. They knelt. "Return to me," she said. "You were never lost. Just waiting to be called." And one by one they obeyed. Spirits walked into her skin like rain into earth. Draven screamed. "No, they're mine. I made them." "You made nightmares," Celestra whispered. "I am the dream that ends them." With Ezren's blade in hand, she rose to the peak of the dream's fire. Draven charged. She didn't flinch. He snarled, "You were my masterpiece." She met his eyes. "And you've never been loved." Then she turned the blade inward and stabbed herself. The blood that spilled wasn't red. It was light. It shot across the dream field, searing through every chain, every tether, every cursed soul. Draven shattered like glass. The sky split open. The black moon cracked. And the dream ended. Reality returned slowly. Smoke rising over silent rooftops. Students waking in their beds, dazed, unsure, blinking as though from a long illness. No one remembered the war. The dream. Her name. But one figure remained kneeling in the courtyard. Ezren. Holding a body. Hers. Still. Pale. Barely breathing. He rocked her gently, his tears falling onto her blood-soaked lips. "I told you," he whispered. "If you chose to burn." He pressed a kiss to her brow. "I would rewrite the ending." Her eyes fluttered. And then, she opened them, looked at him, smiled, and whispered, "From now on." Her voice was hoarse, but whole. "My crown is mine to define." Chapter 29, Ashes Don't Choose the Wind. The reconstruction of Larkhall began before the dust had even settled. Scaffolding was raised over broken towers. Stonemasons filled the cracks left by unspoken magic. The administration released a statement, a campus-wide hysteria incident, prompted by exposure to mold and collective psychological fatigue. No deaths were recorded. No names mentioned. And the files? Gone. Deleted. Shredded. Burned. The world moved on as it always did, by forgetting. Celestra wandered the empty corridor of the East Wing, where the windows had yet to be replaced. Wind moved through the broken panes like whispers. She didn't feel cold, but she did feel thin, as if her body was filled with light and shadow rather than bone. Her footsteps echoed. Too loud for someone so quiet. Her memories didn't come in order anymore. Some days she remembered the way sunlight touched the old theater seats. Other days she remembered fire. Once, she woke up clutching her own neck, convinced it was bleeding, but her skin had been unbroken. The doctors told her it was trauma. That something had fractured during the incident. That it would take time. She didn't tell them about the dreams. She didn't tell them about the gray wolf. She stood in front of the art room now, its door creaking as it swung inward. The scent of turpentine and dust lingered. On the easel, half-finished canvases leaned like tired thoughts. One stood apart. A large canvas, bathed in moonlight. She stepped toward it. The painting showed a woman in a torn black dress, standing barefoot on a cracked plateau beneath a ruined sky. Her eyes glowed gold. Her hand was outstretched, and beside her stood a massive wolf, coat the color of old ashes, eyes a haunting silver. She touched the edge of the canvas and frowned. "I didn't paint this," she whispered. But her signature was there. Bottom corner. In scarlet. She didn't remember painting it. She didn't remember him. And yet, every line, every shadow, felt like a scar on the inside of her ribs. That night, she dreamed again. Not in color, but in feeling. A presence behind her. A hand that never quite touched, but hovered, warm and reverent, just above her skin. And a voice, low and familiar, saying, "You had me. That's enough. You don't need to remember why." She turned in the dream. But there was no one there. Just the scent of pine, smoke, and something burnt but sweet. Morning brought silence. Juno found her on the observatory roof, curled in one of the broken lounge chairs with a notebook in her lap. "Trouble sleeping?" she asked softly. Celestra didn't look up. "Not really. I don't think I dream anymore." Juno sat beside her. Said nothing. After a while, Celestra closed the notebook. "Did you know," she said slowly, "that sometimes when you lose a limb, the nerves still think it's there?" Juno glanced sideways. Phantom pain. Celestra nodded. "I think I have that. But it's not a limb. It's something else. Someone else." Juno was quiet for a moment. Then she asked, "Are you still waiting for him?" Celestra didn't answer at first. Then, softly, "Maybe I'm not waiting for him at all." Juno tilted her head. "Then what are you waiting for?" She smiled. "Just barely. For myself," she said. "Maybe I'm waiting to come back." Later that evening, she walked alone to the lake. The air smelled of rain and stone. The moon above was fractured, still recovering from whatever it had witnessed weeks before. The dock was gone. The water was still. And on the far shore, just beyond the reeds, a figure stood. Tall. Motionless. His back to her. The wind stirred, lifting the ends of his coat. She took one step forward. Then stopped. She didn't call out. Didn't breathe. Because the breeze that touched her skin brought a scent she couldn't mistake. Smoke. Ash. And pine. She closed her eyes. And whispered to the wind, "If you were mine once, you still are." When she opened her eyes again, the shore was empty. But the air remained warm. And somewhere deep inside the hollow spaces of her heart, a pulse stirred. Not loud, but steady. And growing. Chapter 30. Shadows Bound to Me. The sky was the color of bruised lilac when she left Larkhall behind. No one saw her go. She didn't say goodbye to Juno. Didn't leave a note for the headmistress or the restoration crew. There were no lingering stares down empty corridors, no final sweep of her hand over the railing that overlooked the east courtyard. No dramatics. Just silence, a leather bag slung across one shoulder, and the wind at her back like a breath too warm to belong to morning. She wore black again. Not for mourning, but for memory. The road out of the city was more overgrown than she remembered. Or maybe she just hadn't looked closely before. Moss crept up the roots of twisted trees. Stones were half sunken into the dirt, ancient and worn smooth. Each step echoed louder than the last, like she was walking through time instead of space. She didn't rush. This wasn't a journey of urgency. It was a walk through silence. And the ghosts she carried. She stopped by a stream at dusk, letting her boots rest beside her as she dangled bare feet in the cold water. The sky above held no stars, just clouds that pulsed faintly like breath beneath skin. She reached into the inner pocket of her coat. And found it. A letter. Yellowed at the corners, the wax seal half peeled. She didn't remember packing it. Didn't remember reading it. But the handwriting on the front curled like a whisper. To her who remembers flame. She opened it with careful fingers. The parchment crinkled. Inside, only a single sentence in ancient wolf script, written in sharp silver ink. At the next full moon, I will forget you, unless you remember me. Signed, E.G. Her hand trembled slightly, but not from sorrow. From weight. She read it again. And again. And again. Then she lit a match. Held the flame to the edge. Watched as the paper curled and darkened, embers dancing up the lines like fireflies escaping ink. She let it burn down to her fingertips. And just before it turned to ash, she dropped it into the stream. One piece didn't sink. It floated. And on it, still legible in smudged silver. You come or you don't, I wait anyway. She didn't cry. She just sat a while longer. Then rose. And kept walking. The path narrowed. The trees grew taller, stretching up toward a slivered moon. She knew this stretch of land, though no maps named it. It was where her earliest visions had come, where she'd felt the first pang of something ancient thrumming in her chest. Now it was quiet, but not empty. Every shadow here felt like an echo. Every rustle, a memory wearing someone else's skin. At the top of the hill, she paused. Below her, the world unspooled in silence, valleys folded in mist, mountain ridges painted in silver. Somewhere far in the distance, a wolf howled. Low. Not mourning. Not longing. Just present. She took the last page of the letter from her pocket, the one that hadn't burned. Held it to the wind. Then let go. It flew. Not like a falling thing, but like a choosing one. She sat at the edge of the cliff, knees drawn to her chest, eyes on the horizon, and whispered, I'm not waiting for you to come back. The wind shifted. She smiled almost bitterly. I'm waiting for myself. For the version of me that won't be afraid to let you see me when you do. She looked down at her palm. The mark was gone. But sometimes, when she closed her eyes, she could still feel it, like warmth where nothing should be. She rose, turned to leave, and froze. There, just beyond the first bend in the path, in the tall wildgrass. Footprints. Too large for her own. Too deep to be recent. And unmistakably Lupin. She stared at them, then past them. But there was no one there. The wind shifted again, carrying with it a scent. Ash, smoke, and something evergreen. She didn't move closer. Didn't call out. Didn't cry. She just placed her foot into the first print. Felt how well it fit. And stepped forward. Above her, the sky rippled. For a heartbeat. 2 moons overlapped. Then slipped apart.